Good evening, everyone. Seeing that it is 6:30, we will look to call the Wilmington Wildwood Early Childhood Center Building Committee to order on this evening of August the 20th, 2024. As always, we will go through roll call. Julie, if you can assist with that, please.
Dr. Glenn Brand.
Here.
Vivian Barbedian is absent. Diane Allen is absent. Greg Bendel.
Here.
Kate Bissell.
Here.
Kevin Kyra.
Here.
Michael Comosio.
Here.
Justin Couchet.
Here.
Marianne Galezzo.
Here.
Nicholas Golden.
Here.
Christine Holleran.
Here.
John Holloway. Dennis Kelly. Paul Melorani.
Here.
Craig Miner.
Here.
Christine Murray.
Here.
Judith O'Connell.
Here.
Christine Prendergast.
Here.
David Ragsdale.
Here.
Paul Ruggiero.
Here.
Stacy Scott.
Here.
Eric Schlegel.
Here.
And Stephen Turner.
Okay, thank you for that. Item number 2 tonight is the approval of minutes from the July 23rd, 2024 School Building Committee meeting. Do we have a motion to approve?
Motion.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Second. Roll call, please.
Yep, sorry. Switching screens here. Roll call. Dr. Brand,
Yes.
Greg Bendel,
Yes.
Kate Bissell,
Yes.
Kevin Kyra,
Yes.
Michael Comosio,
Yes.
Justin Couchet,
Yes.
Marianne Galezzo,
Yes.
Nicholas Golden,
Yes.
Christine Holleran,
Yes.
Paul Melorani,
Yes.
Craig Miner,
Yes.
Christine Murray,
Abstain.
Judy O'Connell,
Yes.
Christine Prendergast,
Yes.
David Ragsdale,
Yes.
Paul Ruggiero,
Yes.
Stacy Scott,
Abstain.
Eric Schlegel,
Yes.
and Stephen Turner. I don't think I see him on yet, so,
All set?
yes.
Thank you. Item number 3 is the approval of invoices specific to warrant number 14. Will Julie or Paul, will you speak to that? Julie?
Yes, we did not have an opportunity to have a finance working group prior to this, so I'm going to talk about the invoices now, and then we can vote as a group. First invoice is warrant number 14, SMMA's invoice for their monthly drawdown of $7,500. Next up is Doran Whittier Architects' monthly drawdown of $31,500 for a total warrant amount of $39,000.
Thank you. Do we have a motion to approve warrant number 14 tonight?
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Second. Mr. Ragsdale. Discussion? Roll call?
Dr. Brand,
Yes?
Greg Bendel,
Yes.
Kate Bissell,
Yes.
Kevin Kyra,
Abstain.
Michael Comosio,
Yes.
Justin Couchet,
Yes.
Marianne Galezzo,
Abstain.
Nicholas Golden,
Yes.
Christine Holleran,
Yes.
Paul Melorani,
Abstain.
Craig Miner,
Yes.
Christine Murray,
Abstain.
Judy O'Connell,
Yes.
Christine Prendergast,
Yes.
David Ragsdale,
Yes.
Paul Ruggiero,
Yes.
Stacy Scott,
Yes.
and Eric Schlegel.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion passes. Our fourth item, moving right along tonight, is the review of feedback provided in our recent community forum, number 4. Ron?
So we had a lot of people join in the day of. It was a remote community forum number 4. The first question that we asked had to do with the demographics, and the survey through Mentimeter was actually left open until this morning, and so these results are as of today. So we had about 170 people access Mentimeter by this morning when we checked. And then more than half of them actually identified as parents.
Ronnie, for clarification, is this in addition to the 4th of July, does it include the
This is-
population?
This is just from community forum number 4.
Okay, thank you.
Can you tell us how many people were present for that?
The day of.
Yes.
I want to say 109 people logged into Zoom, but that doesn't mean they all accessed the Mentimeter that day.
In addition, I just should point out, we were also live streaming, and we don't have those numbers. We can't,
Right.
I don't believe
Does
we
the
have access
attendees
to those.
include the members of this board who attended?
Right, so the 109, right, would be everyone who logged in to Zoom that day. With Mentimeter, I want to say it was, sorry, I just can't recall the number. It was definitely less than half of this. We had, we typically double with leaving the Mentimeter open for the week, so we typically double the number of people that respond. And
Are
I
you
actually
sure?
think we did more than that, but I could check and get back to you.
Are you tracking IP addresses when people log in? Like, are people able to fill out the survey more than once from the same IP address?
I don't believe they can. I know we don't restrict someone being able to,
I think we tested it, and I thought we couldn't.
For the 4th of July survey, we did test it, and I wasn't able to take the survey more than once from the same.
from the same
It
device.
says you
Yeah.
already took it, because I logged in just to look at the slides. It says you already submitted this question.
Okay, yeah, so then it is set up, yeah. So we asked the question of ranking the options in order of preference. We asked it twice. The first time we asked it was after providing the updated project costs. And then the second time we asked was after sharing the local impact. And so both times, the pre-K 5 new option at North ranked the highest. And when we gave the updated project cost, the pre-K 5 add reno and the pre-K 3 new option, both were kind of head-on-head here. And then after sharing the local impact, that the pre-K 5 add reno actually moved slightly ahead of the pre-K 3 option.
Do we know why the ad reno is scoring higher than the new? Do we have any sort of feedback on that?
So in previous community forums, when we were asked to rank, when we were going through all of the 18 options, typically what we saw was that we asked the question 2 different ways. It had to do with the options themselves, but then also just the consolidation of whether they wanted a pre-K 5, pre-K 3, or pre-K K. And typically, the pre-K 5 would score higher than the pre-K 3 or the pre-K K grade configuration. So I think it has to do with the fact that it includes the pre-K 5 population, so even though it's an ad reno, it's scoring higher because it's pre-K 5 versus pre-K 3.
And I add also, so speaking to family members who took this, there's confusion with AR versus new. People definitely understand the grade configurations. They're not as nuanced as we are, and that's maybe one criticism of this process, or hindsight of AR and N seem more obvious to this group, but it's not as obvious to others.
So you think it's a lot of confusion that?
It could be a little
Yeah.
confusion.
Okay. That's good to hear, because we can clarify that for community forum number 5.
Maybe we can spell out,
Yeah.
I know that's the code for the project team, but if we
Right.
just spell out new ad reno, that should fit. Or for any future survey, not just a
Yeah.
Menti.
The results for.
People are
oh, sorry.
familiar with the acronyms.
So for the gymnasium question, where we asked if there was support in the larger 12,000 square foot gymnasium, of the people that responded, 87 of the 95. So with each question, not everybody will respond to them. So in this one, 95, no, it was a little bit more than that. But the people that responded, 87 of them said that they preferred the larger gymnasium. So that's what you're seeing here.
But they didn't have the cost during this, correct?
Correct. So those were the results. I think these are consistent with every survey that we've taken. We've seen that in each phase, and this is our 5th survey technically, and so with each of them, we have seen consistent results.
Thanks, Ronnie. Any further questions on the Mentimeter results from the most recent forum, number 4?
One comment I have is, with the gym, this has been something that's been causing us a lot of consternation throughout the entire project. I think last night, I think it was Stephen who did a really great job of articulating how to use the space, why we're considering 12,000 square feet and whatnot. So I think it would be beneficial if going forward, we can give some sort of a description of the use and why 12,000 versus 6,000, because just asking the question alone is kind of neither here nor there. It doesn't give you much to work with.
Right, right.
And to piggyback off that, I know I had asked for the use at the Woburn Street. If we can share the use that's going on at the Woburn Street, that'd be great with the committee,
Yeah,
just so we have numbers
Sure.
to back up.
absolutely.
We do have that reporting, and Dennis does have it, and School Dude. It just, I think it needs to be extrapolated in a user-friendly read
Sure.
fashion, because I think when I looked at it, it showed various activities, and I couldn't tell if it was a redundancy and spelled out twice. So he's on vacation, so we need to verify the data so that we're not double counting an activity and make sure that the data is accurate. But That'd we be do, great, just we do because have it. the question's gonna come up, and we
Understood.
really need to have that answer.
We can get that. We just want to validate the data and make sure we're not double counting.
Perfect, thank you.
And we could send it out to the entire committee, so you can all have it before the next meeting.
Just following on what Christine said, that when I was at the booth on the 4th of July, every person that went through the survey with them, I felt that like this needs a quick preamble of like what we mean by even asking this question, because without any context, it's just hard to know how to respond. So I felt like it needed a minute of background of kind of this is the normal size for an elementary, what is 12,000 is the high school, and this is what we're thinking. Many of the things that Stephen said yesterday, because without context, it's hard to answer in a useful way.
Just to kind of, along with what Marianne was saying, I think for me personally, it would be helpful to know not just the usage of the Woburn Street, but the elementary gyms across the town, because if, I don't know, the west is not being used at all, well, maybe that space will still be available, and that impacts our decision-making. It's not just the north side schools, it should be the gymnasium usage across town.
It's clearly something that's come up. I think it's important to note for those that are watching in the community, the reason that this is still here is because of the support of this committee to its inclusion overwhelmingly in the project. It's not something that has been advanced just from, say, our design team or anyone individually, but collectively as a body to this point in time. And so I do think that that's an important piece for folks to keep in mind. Should that shift or change direction is one thing down the road, but certainly we're here with the 12,000 square foot gym if a pre-K to 5 option were to be pursued because of the collective discussion and sense of this committee as a whole.
And I will just add the cost estimates presented to date include, the local share includes MSBA taking 6,000 square feet of that ineligible space out. So that's all baked into the numbers already.
And
One
just,
other thing- I'm sorry.
just to follow up, we would have to make a decision as a committee whether that stays or goes fairly quickly, because
Yes.
if the pre-K through 5 goes through, Dawn Whittier needs to know which size to build, and they need to know quickly, so.
Was there, Judy?
Just
sorry.
one other
Yeah.
point, and I haven't played this out, but just to discuss it, is that there was some talk about if there was some consolidation that you could streamline staffing. If we have games going on at various schools, we are gonna have to have custodial staff and make contractual arrangements to have all of those schools open and potentially pay minimum hours of staffing. So there could be a salary benefit to the town if we had more than one game going on in one building and reducing staffing in that respect, which would be an ongoing savings for the town. I'm certainly not saying that that's proportional to the cost of the gym, but I just want to point that out since we're talking about cost and cause and effective decisions.
Thank
One
you.
more point that Vivian brought up, and I know she's not here, but she had articulated the concept of could we sort of redesign in such a way that you have 6,000 sitting inside the plan, 6,000 outside of the plan, so that we could ultimately prolong or delay the decision to move forward with the additional 6,000 square feet and not hinge the entire project on that one factor.
Yeah, I do remember having a conversation with Vivian regarding that, and I do think that is difficult for us to be able to follow through all the way through the schematic design process. I mean, it's a pretty critical piece. It's a lot of square footage. It's a multi-story building. We have stuff stacked on top of that gym, so if it gets smaller, we have to move stuff. It all can be done, but what we would be looking for from this committee is, once we have a preferred site and we're moving forward, that's got to be one of our first targets, is making that decision, is the gym larger, if it's small, and whatever the decision is, we'll accomplish it and move forward with it, but it needs to happen.
It doesn't buy us that much time.
It does not.
Okay.
One question, if I may, just to follow up through the chair with that same point, because I was in that same subgroup conversation. She was saying that if it was on an exterior wall, that you could cascade it in or out to the size proportion that you talked about. And forgive me, because I'm not as close to the plans, because I'm new to the project. Are we able to lock down the rest of the building to get to the gym for off-hour use? Is that built into the plan that you're
Yes.
gonna be? Because it seems like it's more central into the building.
Right.
That's been.
It is, and it certainly can be locked off, and that's been something that's been through the whole project, is being able to turn public spaces on and off for access.
For all of the options.
For all of the options. The other piece of this, and where you position the gym, so part of it's on the outside, it's not just the space, right? It's all integrated, right? It's the HVAC load, right, on something that's double the size, right? So it's integrated throughout everything we do in the design. So we do need to have that information kind of upfront, because all the engineers use that to move forward with basing sizes and ultimately the costs that we produce for you to go to town meeting with.
Understood, thank you.
Just a question on the gym.
Sure.
This may be drilling it down a bit. Will there be bleachers at the gym that fold out?
Yes, we do envision
have-
bleachers.
Okay.
Determination of the number and quantity, there'll be a detail for the committee to decide as we're moving through the design process.
Anything further on the gym? Okay, unless there's any objection from members of the committee, I'd like to propose moving forward and up in our agenda tonight, specifically part of number 8, which is new items. And that new item that I'd like to add for consideration is the recent memo that Mr. Slagle, as town manager, and I put forth to this committee around the possibility of a delay. So again, if there's any objection, the request would be to move item number 8, specific to new items, up, and we could take that out of order and address that next. That's all right. Okay. Briefly, I'll introduce it, and certainly, Mr. Slagle, if you wish to add on to that. We have had the town manager's office and my office a number of discussions with our design team and with Ms. Leduc as our OPM over the last week and a half, 2 weeks, relative to what seems to us to be a growing level of question, concern around the possibility of delaying what was to be the vote scheduled for this evening. I think just a couple of things that we tried to outline in the memo. First off, just as a reminder, we're here with this schedule not because any one individual created this schedule for us. I know I've heard some chatter and perhaps criticism around, why are we trying to address this in the middle of August where it's still summertime? As a reminder, MSBA as an organization provided our team and this project with this timeline, and so I just think that that's an important piece to point out. We're trying to comply with the organization, MSBA in this case. That's number one. Number two, we've had this conversation with the MSBA. It sounds like this kind of request, consideration for a possible delay or an adjustment to a schedule, is not uncommon from communities. That was their words to us in the call. This happens, and they understand that, and they want to be supportive of communities where they may have to flex or adjust particular aspects of the schedule. So I think that that's an important piece, and certainly that it is something that can be done. So as we talked further about this, it just seemed incumbent upon us to bring forth this as a recommendation to you. I'll again let Mr. Slagle speak to this, but it is our thought, and truly that of the MSBA, that this decision would ultimately rest with this body, should you wish to make an adjustment to the timeline and vote to delay. Mr. Slagle, I don't know if you want to add anything further, but.
Sure, thank you, Dr. Brand. Just to reiterate what Dr. Brand said, that this is based on feedback that both the town leadership and the superintendent's office have received from members of this committee about specifically concerns about enhanced outreach to the community. So I think the sole purpose and the major focus we would have over the next 6 weeks is a kind of a pretty rigid structure of outreach that we've already discussed, and we've kind of laid out in general terms, but have some more specific ideas about. We've set up some specific dates to do another senior center forum, to do another community forum, to potentially do a direct mailer to all the members of the community in an effort to provide the members of this committee with the assurance that we've done our best to reach out to everyone and they have the information, and if they have questions, they have the ability to get in touch with us. We obviously can't force anyone to, you can lead a horse to water, you can't make them drink, so we can't force anyone to respond or provide us with their feedback. The key would be for us to be able to, at the end of this process, to say to anyone who asks, we are comfortable that we did everything we could to reach out to the community and make sure that there was every opportunity for them to get feedback into the members of this committee, so we were making an informed decision. I don't think that the goal of this would be to provide the members of the committee with any extra information that we already don't have from our experts, with the exception of some enhanced information about the use of the gyms. But generally speaking, the numbers we have now are the same numbers that we're going to have when we take this vote in early October. But the reason would be so that at the end of the day, we could say to the community, if asked, we did decide to take some extra time to make sure that every constituent that we could try to do outreach to was given the opportunity to give us feedback. So that would be the kind of the underlying goals of this recommendation from us.
Thank you, Mr. Slagle. There certainly, we've had the opportunity to have a number of discussions with Lee and his team and Julie, and certainly we want to allow them to take a few moments to share with the committee what the implications of this would be, should it be something that there's a will to take action on as a committee. So Lee, I'll turn it over to you.
So on the screen here, you'll see our project schedule. The blue is where the schedule currently is. The green shaded area with the arrows look at the impact if we were to take an adjustment in the schedule and take some more time to do some outreach. The schedule, though, for MSBA board meetings, however, is only every 2 months. So even if we were to say we want to take 4 weeks and do some community outreach, that doesn't mean we're only pushing it out 4 weeks. It's actually potentially 8 weeks. So right now, we are scheduled to submit the preferred schematic report on August 29th. That's the schedule that we currently have. We would look to then push it out to submit it on October 24th, and that would then put us into a December board meeting with the MSBA. Currently, we would be going to an October board meeting, so that you'll see that then there is a two-month delay in that.
Just that board meeting we're referring to is where MSBA would approve your selected preferred option and authorize you to proceed into the next phase of schematic design.
Correct. And then once that board meeting happens and we finish schematic design, we then go to the MSBA and we will have a project scope and budget agreement with the MSBA. That's where we get the final numbers. We know what the reimbursement is from MSBA towards the project, and then we go forward with local project funding. So in schematic design, where we would have been at an April board meeting, we are now at a June board meeting with MSBA. So that final agreement with MSBA on the numbers for this project would happen in June. What then happens for our schedule is that the local project funding vote potentially is now sometime in the summer. However, you have 120 days from when the MSBA board agrees to the partnership, and so you have 120 days that actually puts you into October. So you would have between July and October to get your town votes. So that would put us into the fall, which is, September, October of trying to get that vote. What that does, though, is that pauses the design team from continuing with design until all of those votes are in place, because you would only then be able to contract us into the next phase. And so technically, what is now a 2-month delay potentially could be almost 5 to 6 months. So that is something to be aware of with this schedule. That being said, there are ways to try to do that vote earlier to get us to be authorized earlier and minimize that potential 5 to 6 month delay. But that'll be something that we'll have to figure out with the town once we get closer. But then, we would move into design, construction documents, bidding, and then actual construction. Initially, we thought that by, close to the start of school in 2028 is when the buildings would be occupied. That would actually get potentially pushed to the winter of 2029 for moving into the building.
Without delaying this vote, when would we be looking at funding authorization if we stayed on schedule tonight?
So if we stay on schedule, we would have April, where we would have the MSBA board meeting and that funding agreement. Their meeting, though, is at the end of April, so it depends on when the town meeting happens, or if there would be a special town vote, say a month later. But that final agreement with MSBA would be in April, the end of April.
So with that being in April, it gives the town the option to have a funding vote either at your normally scheduled town meeting, potentially, depending on the date of when that is in early May, or also hold a special ballot if you're looking for a singular question specifically on this in that time frame. By pushing the schedule out, right, the 1 month to get the extra time to go out and do the outreach piece, we missed 2 board meetings, right, and they're every other month, so that automatically pushes us out further. So now you don't get an answer from MSBA, which is a critical answer that you would be looking for, is what is our lockdown reimbursement rate that the state's gonna, and you want that number typically before you hold your town meeting vote. It has happened in the past with our other communities, just based on that timing. They hold their vote prior to the MSBA board approving that, but your vote is contingent upon MSBA approving your project. So that is a mechanism to try and hold where we are right now and be able to give you guys the opportunity to have that spring of 25 town meeting. But that's the caveat there. You would have to have your vote before the MSBA made their final decision and gave you the final numbers. We'll still have our estimates, but you won't have a final number.
So I guess the question then for the municipal folks here is if we were to delay, and Ronnie, you mentioned there might be means for us to close the gap and close some time, could we have a town meeting before this vote? Or would we, how likely is that? What are the options we would have to deal with that? Does anyone want to chime in?
The question being, would the town ever consider having a vote for funding authorization prior to the board making its final determination?
Yeah, that's the determination as to whether or not to put something on a warrant is ultimately rests with the Board of Selectmen. So we'd have to have conversations, obviously, we haven't done that because of open meeting law restrictions, so we'd have to have conversations with the board as to whether or not they were comfortable putting that forward to have a special town meeting without having the exact final number. We would obviously have the numbers that we have now, and as Lee has mentioned, towns have gone forward with those numbers before to get funding. It's not unheard of or certainly unreasonable, but it's a determination that the board would have to make as to whether or not to put forward that. And I think with input from this committee as to whether or not we thought that was the way to go to get a successful project passed.
Mr. Chairman, through you to the town manager. If MSBA gives us a decision in April, how long does it take to pull together a special town meeting and a special election?
Yeah, so if we know the date, we can have those planned ahead, and fill in the numbers before, the warrant has to be closed, relatively short time before the election. So it's not a problem of timing the election after the vote. We don't have to do all the prep after the MSBA vote, but we won't have the final numbers to put in a special town meeting warrant until the 24th. So we could have a special town meeting in, the second or third week of May after in April and have those numbers. But if we had a special town meeting in the second or third week of May and the vote was in June, we'd be going off of the numbers that we have now and not the specifics that we'd get from MSBA.
That also opens up some other issues. We might have basically the same thing we're facing right now, folks saying there's not enough information in that exact kind of month period. People will say, well, we're not seeing the real numbers, so how can we take this vote? I have real concerns about this, now seeing this. Last night came in feeling pretty strongly that a delay would be fair. People want more input, even though 4 different community forums, this has been before, I think 3 to 4 town meetings already. People have had many years of opportunities to get involved with this process. But I was open to a delay personally, but I think this is very concerning to have this level of a delay caused by our delay right now. That's a personal opinion, but again, if we could have the vote lined up, that'd be great. But if we're dealing with that kind of not knowing the number, folks are still going to say it's not transparent, we don't have the right numbers. If we don't delay and just keep it to the regular process as written, then we might not face that problem where we're giving the voters an estimation rather than a bill.
Dr. Brand, one question. So if we were to consider a motion before it was approved, what would we see comfort in that warrant? Do we say assuming a certain percentage of MSBA reimbursement? Is that a way we do it, that voters support it based on, we have an estimate, we're making a number, do we say a minimum reimbursement rate that they would approve it? Does that give comfort, 21? So you don't know the exact number, but you're saying if it's not at least this.
But yeah,
I don't think we'd be able to speak for MSBA to tell you what that minimum is, right?
But could we say that? Okay, understood.
So, this is a $200 million project. A delay of 5 months is not earth-shattering. I want the community at large to have every piece of information that they can have.
Right. I agree.
And right now, we've been hearing that there's a demographic out there that's not getting message. The senior center hasn't even been met with yet.
What? Well, I thought there was a meeting at this.
Nope. 3 people came because they missed the deadline to get into the newsletter.
Right. But
So we are lacking on trying to reach beyond a certain demographic.
Right.
And this delay would help us improve that. In 5 months, to reach another demographic and get the people involved in this project, this has to go to a ballot vote.
Right.
If people think this is being not transparent in any way, they will vote it down.
Of course, but that's why I brought up the point of if we're dealing with an estimate rather than a hard number at the town meeting, that causes a
I think you
similar
go
problem.
with a hard number. We do this the correct way.
So
If we have to go to September of October of 2025,
Mr. Slagle.
this is a $200 million project.
I understand.
Yeah, so I just want to make it clear, I think everybody realizes this. The vast majority of our outreach time, once this preferred option is chosen, if we voted tonight, the vast majority of our outreach, we're going to have to work with the numbers that we have right now. We will not have the final numbers until April. So we're going to have to work the community. The only thing the community is going to hear from us from now, August, until April. So you're talking about 8 months out of the 9 months we have before a vote. For 8 months, all they're going to hear is the numbers we have now. They won't get those final numbers until the very end of the process anyway. So I appreciate what you're saying, and I'm concerned about it as well. But it's important to note that it's not like we're going to have a whole 9 months to say, we know exactly what the MSBA is going to give us. We're going to have to start outreach to the community right now, or in October, if we push off the vote to October, and all we're going to know is what our experts have told us now. We won't have that final number until right before a vote anyway.
Mr. Chair, thank you. I think an important point to make is that although, as was mentioned by our colleague, is that this has been going on for 4 years. But I think people really are starting to tune in as early as the 13th, just whenever, the 7th, when we had the forum, because that was the first forum we had the numbers. I almost, I don't want to disregard the previous forums, but they were just kind of ideals. They were ideas. They didn't have specifics. We didn't have a ballpark range. Now we do. And I think we're going to get, as was seen, as was mentioned earlier, we had much more participation at that forum. Now that we have hard numbers for folks to,
Sure.
that definitely, perks up people's ears when they hear the real dollars. And I think we'll have more participation going forward. So I don't want to totally disregard the previous forums, but I want to keep in perspective that that was the first forum we've had to get feedback based on the numbers that we project.
The other thing that I think is important to note is, in addition to these constraints that we're working around, and we wish it was more flexible and fluid with the MSBA, is this delay also has other potential implications relative to numbers and relative to costs. Something we've been talking about with the town manager's office and my office and our designers. I think we need to have as much of a possible a sense for the committee of what that could look like should this be a direction we're going to take.
Sure, and I can talk to some of that point. I think the key takeaways from this are weighing the very important value of going out and doing more outreach and trying to get more people involved in this, and then understanding very clearly the impacts to the time piece that we just talked about, right? The 1 month potentially equals 5 months, depending on when you want to have your town vote. The other side is, once we publish a number, a cost estimate, that cost estimate is based on time, right? When we're hitting the market, we escalate it out to the midpoint of construction, and that's what we based our estimates on. So if we move that estimate, which we've already provided and it's out there in the community right now, and we say that's going to be 5, potentially 6 months longer, there is going to be a financial impact to our cost estimate just because of the duration of time. So we've tried to illustrate that in a couple of different examples on this next slide. And just to walk you through this, these are the 3 categories of grade configurations that you've seen. These are the midpoints at the top row of the project cost, $88, $146, and $187 million. So if we try and figure out and wrap our heads around escalation, right, because that's the primary driver of the cost increase, typically we see somewhere between 0 and 5% escalation per year. For the last few years, it's actually been higher than that, but we're seeing it stabilize a little bit. So for the purposes of this illustration, I chose a low target of 1% escalation, and honestly, I haven't seen that in my career. But for the purposes of discussion, because they are big numbers, we wanted to walk through this. So a low target of 1% escalation on these projects has a yearly cost of $886,000 on the pre-K, just under $1.5 million on the pre-K through 3, and $1.87 million on the pre-K through 5. If we said, and we based it on the escalation that we include in our estimate, which was 5%, those numbers obviously ramp up quite a bit. And because we're talking, as we've been talking, $200 million projects, 5% on that is a very large number, as you can see. So we break that down into a cost per month. So that cost per month at 1% ranges from $73,000 to $155,000 per month, depending on the option you're looking at. If we said and applied a 5% escalation factor and did that same math, right, then those numbers become $369,000 increase per month on the project cost total for pre-K. And on the other side of the spectrum, pre-K to 5 increases $779,000 per month. We've been talking about a ballpark of 5 months. And so I'm just trying to give you some ranges for you, so you guys know both the time side and the potential monetary side. 5 months, 1% escalation on the pre-K to 5, amounts to about $750,000. If it was higher than that at 5%, right, you can see it's a very large number, $3.8 million increase just over that 5-month time frame. So time is never our friend in construction projects, and kind of once we draw that line in the sand and say, here's the estimate, it's based on a date certain. And anytime we change that, we have to change the estimate. So we certainly have time to do that, right, because we're not coming to vote on a number until we do a final budget for schematic design, and we would take the escalation into consideration at that time. We're just trying to illustrate to you the change potential and the numbers we've provided you to date. And I can't tell you and predict it's going to be 1% or 5%. I'm just trying to give you a range just so that, eyes wide open going into the decision-making process. So there is an effect, obviously, on time, The 1 month, just because of the MSBA process and board cycles, puts you in a situation where either you have to have a town vote prior to MSBA making their decision, or if you want to wait until you have all of the hard numbers and you're pushing that out until the fall town meeting, right, then we're dealing with the 5 months of potential escalation. So I look at this and I try and weigh, the value, the very important value of reaching out to the community and getting that feedback before we can make this important decision, and weighing that against the other side of this, which is time and money. And we're just putting that out there just so you guys have a very clear picture of what that process looks like moving forward.
Thanks, Lee. Judy?
And just ask a clarifier with the escalation totals that you have at the bottom, depending on when this is submitted and involving with MSBA, that portion of the escalation could also be reimbursable by the percentage, is that true?
Yes. Yeah,
So-
they will reimburse on whatever your
Correct.
project cost is
So
moving
we will
forward.
get a portion of that through reimbursement. The other point, just back to it, historically, it's been a while since the high school, but I know that when we went through the voting process, we had pretty concrete numbers that I can recall. The only time in my history in town government that we've gone to a town meeting with an estimate was a warrant article to support an allocation of funds to go after the Restucia rink. But that was a much, much smaller project, less than like 2 to 3 million. Never something of this magnitude. So I can understand costs are associated. I would just remind people, and I know that this is history, but just to remind people of examples where we've weathered certain patterns and we've done well. There was a year delay for this high school for a resident appeal, that tied us up for a year. And we estimated that to be $1 million increase, and we were able to value engineer it out through soft costs, and we were able to address it. So there are ways, and these are estimates, and so people are giving information. It's more just the transparency from Doran Whittier and from the leadership team and everybody that's involved in SMMAs to say, things have a cause and effect, and they may have a cost ramification, and there are steps to mitigate it. There is a portion of this escalation that is reimbursable. From my experience, personally and professionally, is with these projects of this magnitude, you have to have a tremendous amount of public trust, and you have to have a tremendous amount of public trust in the information that people are basing major financial decisions, especially in 2024 and into the future with escalations, construction costs, post-COVID, inflation, election, all of that. And I just would say that I think that a lot of the comments are well-placed, and a lot of times you're faced with decisions that may not be 100% for or against. Sometimes it's 70-30. You can see points on one side or the other, but you have to kind of take all of that information in and internalize it and make a very educated decision. And a lot of people that are here, are volunteers, and some are elected officials that have constituents that they serve. And if they're getting feedback that are saying that, I'm not hearing from you, or I don't have what I need, and you want to feel good about the votes that you're taking, I think that this should be a safe space that people can vote their conscience and do what you think is right. From a personal perspective and a professional perspective, I wouldn't fault anybody for seeing the value in the delay. It is a recommendation from the town manager and from the superintendent to take this delay, based on what they believe is just cause, hearing the feedback from titled officials and the feedback that we are getting from certain quadrants of the community. And I think we need to just make a decision and live with it, and then the rest of the course of this meeting will be guided by that decision, because if we talk about all the further activities for marketing to different outreach and whatnot, we're either going with a preferred option, because we just, and that's a separate conversation if people were saying we want to vote, because that's another conversation. But two, if not, then we need to be talking about public outreach and getting in the senior newsletter right away, and that would really guide the rest of this agenda in a big way. So, certainly I want to open it up to other people's comments, but I think you need major public trust to the tune of 23,000 people to get this to pass. And in the end, it would be a lot of work and effort. We need to come out with a building. In my opinion.
Michael?
Christine will go first.
Oh, sorry.
Just for full transparency to the community, what is the estimated cost of having a special ballot vote that we would need to incur by delaying?
So the cost of a ballot vote is going to be borne the delay isn't going to add an extra special ballot vote. We would, in all likelihood, we were not contemplating putting this on the annual town meeting. So there would have to be a special town meeting at either, whether we delay or not, and then the special ballot question, whether we delay or not. So those wouldn't be any increased costs on that. We wouldn't have the numbers in time to get it on the annual town ballot. And I would strongly recommend putting this on the annual town meeting with addition to the budget. I think it would turn that day into a bit of a nightmare. So I would recommend that we do that at a different time, a special town meeting just on this project. So I wouldn't anticipate additional costs. But in compared to these numbers, it's very minimal. I mean, it's even when you're talking about people who are working, it's a rounding error with respect to the cost of the project.
Other questions, comments? Sorry.
So I think I want, speaking more from the PR perspective and outreach. So 2 reasons why I would be in favor of a delay. We were here a month ago. We thought at that time we were going to make the newsletter to meet with the senior center before tonight. And we also thought that a flyer was going to be in the water bill, which would have been the second one, which took feedback that a lot of us received from Fun on the 4th, changing language and get that out. Neither of those were able to happen for different reasons. So that was, to me, a missed opportunity to reach a broader audience when we had numbers. To the other side of that, we've put together a slide we can visit later of all the potential outreach that we would do. I think the concern would be exactly what are we looking for? Is it written feedback? Is it confirmation we've reached a broader audience? And then when we share what we've put together, what do we think is the most efficient use of the time, and are all these things as important? It's like,
thank you.
Just to add my, opinion, I think as someone for whom a delay has a significant impact, right? An opening of this building is going to very significantly impact Christine and I, for sure, right? We are the ones who will be hopefully living in this space. But even as someone who does not live in this community, I only work here, I have heard more and more concern over the last 2 months from community members. And I think that if this 5-week period is going to allow us a chance to get buy-in from the stakeholders, whoever they may be, to give us a chance of having a positive outcome, it is well worth our time. If we do not put that time in now and are setting ourselves up for a negative vote, there is no delay, there is no building. So we get nothing. It's not a 5-month delay, it's a forever delay.
Right.
And so this 5 weeks, I think, is probably well worth our efforts if we can really put our heads together and reach out in every way we possibly can.
Kate. Paul.
I'm inclined to vote for delay of the preferred design option myself. I think there's just too much hanging in the balance to not have solid numbers to go to town meeting. I don't think we can take that risk. Mr. Town Manager, we have, 7,000 or 8,000 tax-paying households in the town?
10,000.
10,000 tax-paying,
Plus.
even worse, 10,000 tax-paying households in the town. And we've had community forums with, I'll be generous and say 200 people responding to them. We need to make the effort. We need to get a flyer out there. We need to get a flyer that talks about the impact financially to these people. And like you said, get buy-in. We need the support. I will move right now and just get it on the floor to delay the preferred design option vote to October 1st.
I'll second it.
So we have a motion to delay the vote until October 1st. We have a second discussion.
Is it possible to take a doodle poll for that particular week or the week after for us to get the majority of the people available to vote? Rather than making it October 1st, if we put down from October 1st to October 9th, who's available, we might get the full group.
Sure.
On one particular, rather than choosing October 1st.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Kyer, for the suggestion, and I think we certainly don't think there's a reason we couldn't do so. It's recognized, this is another meeting, and it's one that wasn't scheduled originally, and so we also know that voting by proxy is not, that's been explored with town council, that's not an option, so it's an important point to raise. And so if there's a way to try and get a sense of when the majority of the committee is available, that certainly to me would seem to be a good suggestion,
I
Kate.
just ask to Dorn Whittier, is there a date by which we would need to hold the vote to ensure we are able to submit to the next meeting?
Yes, and I think the suggestion somewhere between October 1st and October 9th fits our timeframe for that.
It was a good guess on my part.
We did have that discussion.
And a doodle poll, Mr. Kyra, I will point out, yeah.
We did have that discussion
Yeah.
already, so.
Can we amend the motion?
Yes, so I think we could, well, certainly we can expand the motion, but any other further comment on the motion that's on the floor? Mr. Axel?
So looking at this, and I knew that this was coming, that the, the 6-week or the 1 month delay was not really a 1 month or a 6-week delay, that the way that these things cascade was going to turn into a delay that meant that the building would not likely be able to open in fall of '28, which is what we were originally hoping. And I've heard numerous people in new buildings say never move in the middle of the school year, which we also kind of learned a little bit from the high school.
Right.
So we'll have to, at that point, figure out how we're going to deal with that. So it's like I really dislike the delay, and I really dislike the additional cost. But as I've been trying to do for the entire length of this project, we need to think long-term. That's the point of addressing the needs that we have and trying to do so in a way that is going to put us in a good position for years to come. And, to some extent, a failure of being able to think adequately long-term is kind of why we're in a crunch right now, that we haven't built any elementary schools for over 50 years, though we've obviously been doing a lot of other good things. So ultimately, it really is important that that not just that you have gone out to the community as much as you can and tried to get their impact and invited their participation, but as much as possible, people need to feel it. And there's, of course, a natural phenomenon that people only pay attention if something gets really close. And so it's not surprising that people are only really starting to pay attention now that we have the numbers and we're coming up on the vote. And we would have loved if, 6 months ago, everyone could have had the interest and the attention that we have for it now. But the reality is that, this is when they're paying attention. And, there are some people that it won't make any difference in how they ultimately vote at town meeting. But for some people it will. And people, when you go with an ask like this for a project of this magnitude, and again, for the potential long-term benefit that we are hoping to receive from it, it's important for people to feel, respected, and that, you've really done everything that you could to, collect their feedback and inform them. And again, so looking at the long term, and this has of course been stated also by Ms. O'Connell and Ms. Bissell, that I think that, in the end, the goodwill that we gain, as well as additional information, because we really do want, and this is, every person who I spoke to who was in any way opposed to any of the aspects of the project that I've spoken to, it's just like, yes, you are the person I want to talk to. It's like, tell me what your issues are, tell me what we're not understanding or what we're not considering. So the actual feedback, and then just the respect that we show the town by taking that little extra effort to make sure that everyone is as fully informed as possible is, I think, worth it when we take a long-term view.
Thanks, Mr. Ragsdale. Any other comments?
Diane Allen asked me to read into the record just a quick comment from her. She says, although I cannot be at the meeting tonight as I'm on a plane at this hour, I'd like to express my support for postponing the vote for the preferred option until our October 1st meeting.
Thank you. Thank you.
I agree with everything that's been said, so I won't beat a dead horse. But just to piggyback on something Mike said, I think it's valuable for us to be very clear about what type of feedback we're looking for. Are we looking for numbers? Are we looking for just comments? And along the same lines, kind of the vibe I've been seeing on social media and as part of the PR team with Mike and Christine and Vivian, if we can explore other ways for feedback to come in to us as a committee. I know that the email, we've been getting printouts and about the email address, and maybe that's our main focus and the best way to get it. But if we can maybe think about other ways for people to provide the feedback over the next 6 weeks, it might be beneficial for us. I don't know what those are, so I'm not trying to create a problem that I can't solve, but we can just think about other avenues for collecting this feedback, that we need to be able to say, we did what we could and we got the numbers, or we got the qualitative or quantitative data that we were looking for 6 weeks prior to tonight. Thank you.
And I completely agree that we need to nail down what our expectations are. I would be concerned about trying to put to try to set our expectations at a particular amount of numbers, because again, all we can do is try to do the outreach. We can't force people to respond. So I think my suggestion would be, from a committee level, that we come to an agreement as to these are the things we're going to do, and we're commit to this list of outreach attempts. And unfortunately, then we have to kind of let the chips fall where they may as to whether or not people are responding via Mentimeter or via email, or if we come up with some other magic tool. I don't know what either. So I would be a little uncomfortable setting like a target goal for number of feedback. I'd be much more comfortable saying we're going to commit to these 4 or 5 different things we're going to do in the next 5 weeks, and make sure that they're, that we follow through with those, and then kind of let the feedback be what it is. That's my 2 cents.
Thanks, Mr. Slagle.
Mr. Chairman, we're going to talk about this at a different agenda item this evening? or-
Yes, the intention
Okay,
is to
I'll
do
reserve
so.
my comment then.
Sure, thank you. Any other further comments? Mr. Slagle?
And this is you're obviously the chair. I wondered if it made sense to perhaps, I'll see if any members of the public had any comments before this vote was taken. That would be obviously at the
Thanks, Mr. Slagle. Sure. We can certainly do that. We do have public comment on the agenda at number 10 later tonight, but there is certainly no reason why we can't open this up if there's no objection to members of the committee.
Mr. Chair, just one point of order, if I could. Is the gentleman willing to amend his original motion, just so we're clear, the folks can comment on, and I'm not pressuring you, but now would be the time if you were willing to amend.
Yeah, I'd be willing to amend.
Thank you.
Thank you. No objection to public comment at this point on this item specifically of a delay? So there are members who are joining us remotely, I believe, as well as in person. Perhaps we can start with in person, if there's anyone here this evening who's joined us. Thank you for being here. And if you wish to offer public comment on this current idea of a delay, you're certainly welcome to come forward. Bryson? This is rather unusual, but Dr. Bryson, please.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Jennifer Bryson for Baker Street. I'm also on the school committee. So I actually prepared something a little different, but I just wanted to, so I'm going to amend it in my mind as I go, so bear with me. I want to point out that the school committee last night did unanimously support the pre-K to 5 consolidation preferred design, so I'm going to start there. But I do want to thank you, Building Committee, for your leadership, and obviously to Dorn Whittier for their excellent presentation Friday, earlier yesterday, last night. I've seen it now 3 times, so thank you for putting that together. As one of the elected officials who worked on the original SOIs with Jonathan Eaton in 2020 during COVID, we did 6 of them. Going into it pretty transparently from the get-go, that consolidation was something that we were hoping the town would be interested in. So this word consolidation has been used repeatedly since 2020. So I just want to make that point. Seeing this presentation on Friday, yesterday, twice, was very exciting, because while I originally supported consolidation as an educator and a parent, it was now even clearer to me after seeing what you sent to us and what you showed us and walked us through so clearly. I was like, oh, good, and it makes so much sense. So I think as an educator, I was very supportive of consolidation for a number of reasons. Obviously, transitions reduced. I think people in town have heard that many times. more efficient use of staff, especially staff who provide special services like occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech therapy, reading and math intervention, and appropriate modernized spaces for all students to receive instruction. And so we've talked a little bit about where students are receiving specialized instruction, in hallways, in closets, in rooms that actually have no windows, no natural light. And so for those of us who are in the buildings, who have children in the buildings, we see these spaces on a pretty daily basis. And coming to the middle school and then to the high school as a parent was like, like it's just so wonderful to be in a modernized space. And so a delay, obviously, like Mr. Golden, I'm like, oh no, because for us, we've been living it for such a long time. And I do get to this point where people I'm talking to seem to also be very much in support of that preferred option, the pre-K to 5, but they're also looking to all of you to tell them what's best. People have said to me, well, Jen, what do you think? What do you think we should do? And so I also want to make the point that being on a committee, just like on the school committee or the select board, people often just are looking to us to make a good decision that they can trust. And so I hope you get the feedback that you're looking for, but I think they actually want to know, because you're immersed in this, they want to know what you think. They want to know what's best for Wilmington, and they want you to prove to them that it's best for Wilmington. So I say you, meaning collectively, the building committee, the select board, the school committee, they're looking to us as individuals, but also as committee members to say, this is really what's best. And so it's unfortunate that we feel we don't have that, because I think as a school committee member and a parent and a community member, I actually feel like I do have the information I need to have made the decision last night, but I also sit in your seat in a different way, and I know what it's like to make a decision and say, we didn't do a good enough job. And clearly, the missed mailings and other things that I've heard about over the last few weeks are super concerning. I don't know if the room is not full. So people knew this was happening tonight. Unfortunately, in these types of things, people say to me, it's just not what I know, Jen. You know education. You tell me, what do I need to know to make the right decision? What do I need to know when I go to that ballot box? So as you go on tonight and take your vote and then maybe talk about what you're going to do, it's really about being confident in what you think and then letting other people understand why. So when I can sit with someone over coffee and say, but if you look at these numbers, you might be able to see why in the long term, this pre-K to 5 actually saves us a little bit of money. Like, people aren't seeing it like that. They're just seeing the big number. And I think we need to individually and collectively do our job to do that. They're not going to fill out more surveys. I mean, they may here and there, but they want us to stand outside and talk with them and go to coffee and convince them and teach them, why is this an important thing that we're doing and how can I get behind it? More surveys, more Mentimeters isn't going to get you people to show up for the election. We don't have a lot of people show up for the election as it is. I mean, I run a couple of times and I'm always like, 2,000 people came out in a town of 23,000. So I think we really need to be thoughtful about this because they are looking to you to make the right decision for them. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bryson. Other members who are here this evening, may wish to offer public comment? Okay. Is there anyone joining us remotely tonight, Ms. Leduc?
Yes, there is. William Maselli?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
We can.
Okay. Good evening. Thank you for all the good discussion. Jen, thank you for your comments. That's actually what made me decide to speak here. So I'm going to say a couple things. The first thing I'm going to say is that I support the pre-K to 5 option, new building, because I do think it's important, as Dr. Bryson did say, that, you know, as select person people and people on all these committees, we should let people know how we're thinking if we know what we want. And I'm just putting it out there that that is what I am supporting with pre-K to 5 new construction. The other thing that I'm going to say, which is probably going to be unpopular, but you know, not new to that, is my opinion on this whole thing. Have we done things perfectly? I don't know. You know, I know the whole senior center meeting that probably was not done correctly, meeting with them with the short notice and all. But this has been going on for years. And the truth of the matter is, if people didn't know, they didn't know because either they just are not involved, they didn't care, they didn't hear. And I don't mean that to seem mean. The reason why it's being kicked up now is because there's been a lot of talk by people who do care on social media, okay? And that has kicked up a lot of people talking about it, which I think is a wonderful thing, by the way. I don't think it's a bad, I'm not throwing shade at anybody here. But in my opinion, that is why we're at this point of delaying, is because there's been a lot of talk about it, but the bad part about it is that people, some people that are bringing it up, I will say are in the know, they've done their homework, but the majority of people that are commenting on these other things are reading headlines, they're not delving into the project or looking at things, and you can tell by their comments. It's not, this isn't an opinion, this is fact. If you go and read any of these comments, if they just looked at the presentation, they would not even ask or comment like they are. I appreciate people's opinions after they do, whether they agree with with me or not. I want to hear from people, but I'm just telling you how I feel about this. I do, on the other hand though, agree, I hate delaying this, especially now that it's going to cost us more money, but we do have to think of the people, and if this is going to make people happy, then, I guess we gotta take the hit and do it. But in my opinion, people have made up their minds. I truly don't think you're gonna get any more people to go one way or the other. But I think that the issue we have at hand now is people want to delay because they want to hear more. And if we don't do that, it's just gonna cause an uproar. I truly don't think it's gonna change the votes, but that's just my raw opinion, and I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Ms. Maselli. Is there anyone else, Ms. Ledoux? No. Okay. Thank you for those comments. Back to a motion that we have on the floor. Unless there's anything further?
What would you like, what would you like to amend that motion to, between October 1 and October 9?
Is that a safe, if I can check to as a absolute end date of October 9th?
Oh, you
Is that,
say early October?
is that
To a future date in the beginning of October?
Or maybe a future date not to exceed October 9th.
Prior
or not
to
to go
October
beyond
9th.
October
Okay.
9th, then you cover
All
the
right.
spread.
So I'd like to move the vote on the preferred design option to be taken
On or before.
On or
October-
before-
October 9th.
October 9th.
sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Yep.
I think we can transition to that next. Yeah. Okay, my apologies, sorry. So we have an amended motion on the floor. We're looking for a second then, please.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? Okay.
Just to clarify, it was on or before October 9th?
On or
is that-
before.
On or before October 9th.
Okay, perfect.
I do just have one more quick thing. I want to thank everybody because this has been a really good discussion, and I agree, Mary Ann makes up a great point. This is a really long-term project, and I totally get that. I just want to ask, like, a point of information from you guys. I imagine most communities don't delay twice. That's probably foreign to the extent of never happening, right? Have you ever witnessed that happen?
I haven't myself, not to
Okay.
say that it hasn't happened in other communities facing these decisions.
Yeah. Because I've come around to respecting that this is probably the best course, but boy, like, we should really make sure this is only one delay. Regardless of, if we put our good faith efforts in, we'll be talking about our efforts to reach out to the community, but this has to be a one-time thing, so,
Yeah.
in my opinion. But
Thank you.
thanks.
I have another comment. The preferred option that we have today is 99% likely going to be the preferred option on or around October 9th. That doesn't change. So if we were to vote today and continue with our outreach, our messaging may change a little bit, but regardless, we're still trying to garner support ultimately for a vote in May. So what really changes? So we have constituents that we are acknowledging that need a little more outreach, but what's changing in all of that?
For one, I haven't solid which one I prefer at this point, because I've only heard from a very small demographic. As he pointed out, 200 people.
So let's, again, playing the devil's advocate again. we're not going to move the needle very much in feedback that we get. So if we're getting 200 out of 23,000, let's say we meet with another 100, 200, we go knocking on doors, I don't know, maybe we hit 500. That percentage is still so small again. Does that give us more data and satisfaction to be comfortable with an option?
I personally would have to evaluate that after we go to October.
Mr. Slagle?
Just to respond to that, this is my personal opinion. The reason for doing more outreach at this point in time before we make a vote is so once there's a vote, we can start off the project by saying, we did extra outreach to try to make sure you folks knew before we made a vote and you had your opportunity. I think that you're right. The ultimate goal is a vote sometime in 2025, and that's the ultimate. The ultimate win is when we get a building. I think that the best way to start off on a good foot is to be able to say to people at the very beginning, it was so important to the community, we took extra time to try to reach out to you before we made this decision to let you have a chance. And if pushed, I would probably agree with you that this committee has the information it needs to make a vote. But part of this is we don't have the ultimate say, and we need to make sure that we can kind of, with a good conscience, say to the public through the whole outreach process that we're going to start the minute this vote is taken, we're at this option because we reached out to the community and got all the feedback we could, and that's what we came up with was this best option, and we tried to reach your constituency too, and this is how.
That's fair.
And I'm just worried that I don't, if we didn't do it, I would be worried that, what if there's a senior who's on the fence that said, well, they didn't bother to, like, they screwed that up, and so now, I've seen these votes come down really close in the ballot questions, and I wouldn't want us to have to, the pushing the rock up that hill just a little bit further just makes it that much harder, where I think that it just might be more easier for the members of this committee who have to make this vote to be able to look at the constituents who may say, why did you do this, Eric? Why did you take that vote? And I can say, well, we had all this outreach, and then, the committee was concerned we didn't have enough, so we went on and did even more. And we did 110% of the outreach we thought we should do. That's just my take on it. And I understand the cost implications, and they are real, and I think there are things that we can try to do from the town side to not have it be a 5-month delay and have it be less if we can finagle our the way we're doing our voting. But even, at this point, I think that extra confidence that the committee members can take into the community to fight the pushback that we may get from someone who's saying, you didn't reach out to me. I think that is what we're looking for. That's what I'm looking for.
I agree.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Full disclosure, I'm in favor of a delay. I'll be voting in favor of Mr. Malorani's motion. But I can see it. I too am frustrated with the possibility of this cost increase. I'm frustrated with the setback. But I would just urge those who are also equally frustrated by that is to ask questions like, why didn't the flyer go out? Why didn't we have the forum? Why were deadlines missed? That's where I would channel my frustration and asking those questions. That how did we arrive at this moment when we feel like we're compelled to make this big decision and have to delay? But as I mentioned, I'll be voting to adopt the recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Mendel.
I think just one last point is that, we talked, this is the practical side about why not to delay it. We have a public relations end of things. We have a political component of it as well. And I talked about the public trust piece. I think it's important that we have everybody in this committee working together towards a common goal with a preferred option that we can all get behind. And I'm hearing, I will say, just, not to shine a light on it, but it's been a joy to be acting town manager for the past 2 weeks, and I have heard more feedback and opinion from committee members that I haven't had the pleasure of speaking to, and the most consensus that I've seen built around this was the concept of delaying. And so we had to take action and respond to that. And, Eric worked during his vacation because I had him on emergency conference calls pretty much with Glenn, and he and I and Paul and the extended team to go over this. And it's a difficult situation when you're trying to do a public project, and I'm just making general comments, I'm not specifically saying to you, that when you hear feedback from a number of people, whether it's in public forums, on boards and committees, and then you continue to march on and just take the vote, then people feel that the committee is diluted in terms of its impactfulness and its in serving on a committee, because if you give feedback and you get consensus that there should be a delay, and then you go in a different path and don't take heed to that prescriptive advice, it's going to disenchant people, and they're not going to want to serve, and people in the public are not going to feel that it's worth the time and effort to get engaged, because the committee's just going to do what they want anyway. And I'm not sure that that's the spirit and intention of this. The goal is to bring Wilmington forward into the future, collectively as boards, committees, and this committee, and as a community, and it's going to take a lot of money, and it's going to take a lot of effort. And if this delay brings more people, so that we're leading by example, and people are following us, because if not, we're just going out for a walk if nobody's behind us. Do you know what I'm saying? And I don't think that's the best approach, and that's why I'm advocating to take the recommendation from the superintendent and the town manager. I firmly believe in the trust that I have in them, that they would not have penned the memo recommendation if they didn't believe that that was what was necessary, based on all that we're hearing from the feedback that we're receiving through the front offices that we serve in.
Thank you. Anything further? So we have a motion, and I think, help me, we have a second?
Second.
Wait, thank you. Unless there's anything further, then roll call vote, please.
Dr. Brand?
Yes.
Craig Vendel?
Yes.
Kate Bissell?
Yes.
Kevin Kyra?
Yes.
Michael Comosio?
Yes.
Justin Couchet?
Yes.
Mary Ann Galezo?
Yes.
Nicholas Golden?
Yes.
Christine Holleran?
Yes.
Paul Melorani?
Yes.
Craig Minor?
Yes.
Christine Murray?
Yes.
Judy O'Connell?
Yes.
Christine Prendergast?
Yes.
David Ragsdale?
Yes.
Paul Ruggiero?
Yes.
Stacy Scott?
Yes.
And Eric Schlegel?
Yes.
Great. Thank you for the discussion, thank you for the feedback, and thank you for bringing us to this point. We're going to move on in the agenda to item number 5, review of preferred schematic design options and cost, and continue through, I think, really the bulk of the agenda. But first, we're going to talk about this, the specific discussion around outreach and next steps. It seems like it has a logical connection to the motion that just passed. I think I'll offer 2 comments, and one, this is in part, some people touched upon this earlier, and also from my own experiences in different communities. I just want folks to sort of think about this, is that this is not a last-ditch effort around outreach now between now, this evening, and when this vote happens, but certainly post that vote. And as has been mentioned a couple of times, and I've lived it myself, once we get the preferred option in sight, the outreach has to continue, and there can be more folks that come to the table in organized ways. The yes votes, as you see in communities that pursue that, my understanding is that was here in Wilmington for the high school. I'm not sure what that group was called, but outreach will continue and have to ramp up and expand. And I think the second thing that dawns upon me about hearing the conversation here is I know that there's been some second thoughts around perhaps the size of the committee here that we're working with, and sometimes maybe that makes this a little bit more difficult, but I'd just like to pause and remind everyone, we have a big committee here, but we have representation from a lot of key stakeholders. My understanding is perhaps a different configuration than when the high school was in play. I obviously wasn't here at the time. We really do have many of our constituent groups here. I want to thank Mike, Christine, Vivian, and Justin, who have been working really hard as part of the outreach committee to date to try and push this forward. They are 4 individuals. They have brought forth their thoughts and ideas on how to orchestrate this. We have a lot of smart people on this committee who represent different stakeholders, has been mentioned a couple of times. Now is the time, and going forward, to channel what your thoughts are around what it is that you think would be helpful, both in terms of connecting with the constituents who you represent, but also the kind of information that would be helpful. And again, though, I want to thank the Outreach Committee, and I think that their membership is still open. And I think you'd be open to expanding that group.
Yeah.
So I'll put that plug in there. We're going to transition to outreach, and we do want to talk very specifically about next steps and some of the conversations that Mr. Slagle and I have had around those next steps. But just quick review of the outreach that has taken place, and then hone in on some of the more specific actionable steps we're thinking about and want your feedback on.
Sure. So this is a list of some of the opportunities for outreach over the next several weeks. We will have another SBC meeting in September, so prior to the October meeting, we would have at least one other SBC meeting. The potential we have looked at is a community forum, an additional one, and we've targeting the date of September 18th for that. A mailer to go out to the community, the district superintendent's newsletter that goes out, Wildcat Corner, the senior center, a target date of September 19th has been identified. The district website is always available and continuing to update as information is available. On that project-specific website, there's also the FAQ, frequently asked questions. Continue with updated the display boards that are around town, and then any town-wide communication about project information to go out. I'm going to pass it over to the PR committee, and I think
Thank you, and
Michael
really
Komosi
thanks to
is here.
Vivian for being on vacation so that I get to do this. So we've spent, I think since we met with Judy, thank you, a few weeks ago, I think before that we had been having thoughts ourselves that we should delay, and I think it's good that the committee did this. So we started looking through all the things we could do. Some are continuing what we've done, others are new items, or new forms of outreach. I think the biggest change we're gonna make is we're gonna have an initiator, as we're putting it, mostly from the PR committee, who's gonna make sure that each process happens. I think some of the things that have happened, there's been a handoff and that hasn't always gone the way we thought. Community mailer, I think we can come back to that. We can talk about that, but that's the example you have here. I think the PR team gave some input. I know, thank you, Judy and Eric, for working on this, especially on vacation, and others have given some thoughts. So I think there's a lot of value here in reaching the most number of people. Christine's been, a lot of us have been as active as we can on Facebook. I think we want to designate one person who kind of leads that effort, and we can get consistent messaging. Jen Benelli has been part of our PR group at times as a very active member of PAWS. I think we want to take advantage of that if they want to help educate parents. And I think the thought there is that we do that before the open houses. That's get some messaging out so that we at least reach that audience. Again, there's a lot of parents we know have heard about this. Maybe there's some who haven't. We can think about ways we meet them at schools. Town organization list, we've not done direct emails yet. I believe we're hoping that would be after we selected an option. I think at this point it makes sense to reach out to more groups and leaders of those groups and try and get into their hands so that they can have individual discussions. If we reach 100 groups, that's 100 people who can reach a few more people.
The challenge with that, though, that's probably one of the biggest challenges in this list, is that there is no central database that stores leaders of these organizations. You're talking about nonprofits, about Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, et cetera. Judy gave us a list to start with, but there are no contacts in them. So I'll let Michael keep going, but there's a sentiment that I want to, well, I'll just jump in now. This is really a grassroots campaign. That's the way to look at this. You'll notice that it is geared towards the single option vote. This is not through May, through the vote. This is right now. And so the four of us can't do all this together. We have content creation that has to happen, and then we have to disseminate information. And so we really need recruiters, champions, people who are going to help cascade the information and do the outreach with us. So we can certainly do the creation, but we need people to step up because we just don't have access to everything.
One comment, if I may, quickly on that, through the chair, if that's okay, is that, perhaps we focus on 3 or 4 things that we can do really well and hit it out of the park. And just for transparency, and I apologize, this should say draft on it. This is not like, this is what it is. This was more, and to give credit to Tracy Ingersoll out of the superintendent's office that put this together in 10 minutes, and took the graphics from Doran Whittier and SMMA and put this together. This should say draft. It should have a watermark on it. So if people want to write draft right across it, that would be helpful. We're kindly asking that you do not disseminate this as presented because it is a draft. But the goal is that, if we take this and maybe perfect it, we can leverage it as a mailer, and then people can use that and cascade the same information. If we get something that we all like, and it's 1 page or 2 page, whether it's color or not, and we get buy-in from this, and I want to be careful to be succinct here, but also to come across the right way. I applaud the efforts that you were doing as we met. There were several people that were involved in the high school, and you're doing the workmanship of 4 people trying to do all of this, and that's a Herculean task, and it's impressive, and it's very appreciated. One thing I would just suggest and say, and I've said this in the private setting, but I'm saying it for the benefit of everybody else, when you have a committee and people are attached to it, we have to have some committee consensus, in my opinion, on messaging, so that a committee member doesn't see something, go out and say, I never saw this, or my name's attached to it, or I want to make sure that I'm in the know, so that everybody believes that the information is credible, accurate, and is presented in the image and likeness of what people on this committee think should be the media vehicles that are going out there. It also should be something that select boards are aware of, school committee people are aware of, the superintendent and the town manager are aware of, so that we have closed loop communication and everybody's in the know, and that we're creating branding and messaging that centers around the project. So when I say that, that's not to take away from anybody's efforts. You gave a great place to start. I just think if we can harness that in with committee feedback and make sure that we're all kind of rowing in the same direction, like, for example, looking at this, one feedback that came through a kind of an ad hoc conversation is maybe on the front, the key milestones should actually be on the back because we've already achieved those, and then bring the cost impact to the front and the important dates to the front, because that's what's front and center on the front burner. So we helped put this together, and we're already critiquing our own work. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's more just, the work of many, brings light work, for everybody. So that was the spirit of having this conversation, and then perfecting, when the information came out about the forums, I didn't want to kind of squash that enthusiasm, but in my opinion, I believe that the town manager and the school superintendent, with the partners that we've contracted, should be the primary people in those meetings, presenting to town folks with all of you as additional support if you're available, because you may be faced with big town and school questions that go back 30 years in history that frankly we're not asking you to be knowledgeable on the history of the town in every way, shape, and form. You're a kind volunteer. Does that make sense? And we should have the people that are employed by the town taking ownership for running those programs during the day or at night.
Works for us.
Mr. Chair. Yeah, thank you. This is outstanding, by the way. This is, even if it is draft or it's in progress, this is outstanding. But I guess one of the silver linings of the mailing not going out is we'll have the opportunity for this great piece to go out. I wanted to add, now that we have this delay, we have more opportunities. So one of the things that I'm already thinking about, the list, I'm sure others are thinking about important dates that are coming up and opportunities for us, like Fall Fest, even having this when people go to vote at the state primary, to be able to walk out with one of these in their hand, farmers markets. There's all other community events that we hope we could get some feedback from. I'm willing to commit that we'll certainly have this on our agendas in both of our meetings in September, where people can give feedback. We have 2 meetings in September, both are in person, obviously, and we'll allow for feedback. So, I think this gives us some opportunity, to distribute these at a couple other places. And just a few that just came to mind. I'm sure others have additional thoughts on that.
If I can just add quickly, and apologies, because mine, you can see, says draft, so I don't. This can be modified. I'm very fortunate to have Ms. Ingersoll working in our office. This can be modified very quickly based upon some feedback here. This was put together, I think, the end of last week, so it certainly doesn't capture the additional dates that we were talking about here and the vote. So we can certainly modify that, and any other feedback that folks on this committee have, certainly welcome it.
Ms. Ingersoll did a great job with this, but I see right off the bat, right at the top of this, right here, your input needed, take the survey now, QR code right to the survey. So people will hit it with their phone. If this is going to go out to 10,000 homes,
Make it count.
you're going to get more than 200 responses. I respectfully disagree with my colleague that we can't move the needle on this. I think we can. I think we can get thousands of responses just with this here, okay? Ronnie, can you back up one slide, please? I'm blown away that there's no social media on there. I'm blown away.
Community Facebook
For
page.
pause.
Oh, no. Next to Christine for community Facebook page. I think
Okay.
that's social media.
Why isn't the town of Wilmington having a stronger presence on the internet, on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter? Why aren't we blasting this stuff out every week? And it's got to be is a post with a QR code, take the survey. The Wilmington community page has 13,700 members on it. One post, I know there's not a lot of great things going on there, but one post gets the information out. We don't have to respond. All we have to do is get the information out. We need to have a bigger presence. The town of Wilmington needs to have a bigger presence on social media. That's how you're going to get this message out. Everybody works on social media now. Everybody's face is buried in their phone. That's how you're going to connect to people. Those are
Can
my
I
comments.
ask, we don't have a Facebook page, correct? The committee. So is that, I know you guys are stretched, right?
So the way that social media works is you have to build up your following. And so if we were to open a page today, it would be challenging and not the best use to recruit people to the page. It's sort of after the fact. We would be better, which we have been, actually, we've had a ton of posts on the Wilmington community page by way of some of us posting or pause posting or some community members
Wilmington
championing
Apple
and
has been
posting.
great.
I would like to
So-
see the town of Wilmington. I want the information coming from the source. I mean, I think that's,
Yeah.
I do want to defend our IT department. We do put out stuff. I mean, I try to stay off Facebook, full disclosure. But I do know that the town, our IT director and some other staff do put notices out. You know, I want to make, I respect your opinion, but I do want to make sure it's clear. We do put stuff out.
but there need to be these notices, and it has to be a regime where we're putting out something every week. And I think in 5 weeks, we can hit thousands and thousands of people by doing that.
And I would even complement that by saying, you know, perhaps we want to put some money behind it by boosting the advertisement, you know.
And we don't have to create a Facebook page. We can just post on the pages, the groups that are already out there. Like I said, we don't need to respond to anything, just get the information out there, give them a QR code.
So Paul, if I could just respond to that, your feedback is certainly well heard and you're correct. I think before we get to the level of distribution, it was more about getting this committee consensus on the messaging. This is my, I mean, I'm not passing the buck, but this is my second committee meeting. I wasn't on the committee previously. That's not an excuse. I'm just saying that I'm looking for consensus and trying to rally the committee together on messaging and content, because if we're, not that we're not capable of putting it out there, but you all put real valuable feedback. My suggestion would be if people can take a homework assignment, we can spend the time kicking around here, but I know we have to get through a number of things. I would kindly ask, and I'll even take ownership for it myself and share it with the team here, is to send feedback to my email, by a certain, we can set a certain date and we can get those changes. I've been working back and forth with Tracy with the feedback I've already been getting, and I can channel that through Glenn's office if people, have feedback. The other part, though, is if we don't tackle it and get a final today, how are we going to distribute the final back for consensus? we only Because have we're not 6 going to have weeks. another meeting. So we might have to walk through this in this meeting. I'm just brainstorming live, publicly, but I have gotten a lot of feedback from a lot of people that they have not been satisfied with not having input on what is disseminated. So if we can cure that concern in this meeting, that's a start, and then we can perfect how it's rolled out. I'm looking for one masterpiece that we can just cascade through every media vehicle. We have a town hall Facebook page, we do have IT staff, we have a Twitter account, we have a Wilmington Public Schools page. We can do as you ask, but I just want to see that if we can get buy-in from this committee as to what goes out.
To your comment, I think everything you said earlier about moving the stuff on the back onto the front page is great, but we're going to take a vote on October 9th. I'm thinking October 9th. We're going to take a vote on one of these three options, right? And right now, as we sit here, we're going to take a vote based on the input of 200 people. What if we have people filling out this survey? What if we get 1,000 responses and 600 of them are for pre-K 3? What do we do? We need to work towards October 9th, and we need to get these options out there the simplest way possible. Your input needed, take the survey now, QR code. Get it out there. And that message should be across the board on Facebook, Instagram. I don't know if we have Instagram. I'm not on Instagram. Twitter. But that should be it. Very simple. And then the QR code will take them to the survey. Everything else is on here that they need. And that's my recommendation. That I still am not convinced that by October 9th, I'm still not convinced that pre-K 5 is going to be the option, once we get it out there.
So just to clarify, for the survey that you speak of, is there a survey that I'm not privy to that has been used in the past that's separate from the Mentimeter, or is that a replication of the Mentimeter questions, or is there another survey?
I think we put these options out there.
Just to clarify, there's not been.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, then
So we would have to create a survey
with these options, the benefits to these options, the cost impact, and let people hit it. That's how you're going to reach people.
I think I'm reminded of us, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there was like a recent rink committee survey that went out, and we had nearly 1,000 responses to it, you know. Is that correct? It was like maybe a year ago or so.
Correct, yeah.
So
about a
it's
year ago.
exactly what you're describing, right? Here are the options, what do you think?
Yep.
And we got that feedback.
Can I make a suggestion too? I love the idea of having a consistent messaging that we're using to share to all people. I think if we're doing some sort of online survey response, it should be fairly easy to create a few different versions of that, so that we have maybe one QR code survey that's our online version that's going to social media. We have a different one for so we're getting different sets of results, which will help the committee to be able to say, the online response says this, the senior center says this, the parent open house says this, which will also then inform us for our future, our post-October 9th, we can say, oh, well, the parents at open house, we only got 50 responses. The mailings, we got 2,000. Online, we only got 500. It will help us to know where to really direct our efforts if we can really target and get some numbers of responses that way.
Thanks, Kate. That's a good idea.
Hey, why haven't you joined the PR team?
Yeah.
Just gonna say.
Nothing.
I'm not doing anything.
I did begging. I got some time.
Our open house is really a great opportunity because all of the parents are there. And teachers can give a quick blurb before they get started and get feedback. So I think take advantage of that. Parents show up for that. In every school.
So I think too, the survey is gonna need to really have in bold print, the community forum. That has to be bolded down here, because that's what we're driving toward.
Sure. I mean, I think
So-
the important dates that we've already chosen, which is the senior center date and the community forum date, need to be front and center.
Yes.
Just an open and transparent. Dr. Brandon and I have already discussed, we're both going to attend the senior center forum, so we'll both be there. So the folks at the senior center, I'm sure they'll be thrilled to have the school superintendent and the town manager show up too.
When would the mailers have to go out to all the residents to target, to be for this community forum?
So
What date?
in reality, we need to probably put this in the mail before the end of this month.
Okay.
but we're lucky in that the two dates that we're gonna put on here are the 18th and the 19th, so, and then the meeting, we can put on the Board of Selectmen meetings, we can put in the next, school building committee meeting, which is on the 17th. But you don't wanna drop it in somebody's mail, so they get it the day before a
Exactly.
meeting, because they won't show up, they need to see it and know that. So we probably need to do it sometime before the end of next week.
Nick, they've been waiting.
I just want to speak to something I think, Judy, you're kind of getting at this is, are we going to rewrite the whole thing tonight? Like, are we going to have someone do it via an email thread? Like, what's this? Because this is, if we just do this, then we really have to vote on a whole series of plans, and that's fine. But, we're going to be having a lock-in in the high school. We're going to hang out all night. But yeah, I think we should talk about that. It's like, how do we want to do the content writing?
Well, my suggestion would be this, and I'm sorry to have to jump. My suggestion would be, if folks are comfortable with the content currently, and the switching of locations so that, the important upcoming dates and the potential and the financial impact is on the front, and kind of the background and the milestones are on the back, with an addition of some kind of highlighted language that says, we need your help, please respond to this email now. We can work on trying to figure out a way to do an online poll and set up multiple different QR codes so that we're gonna have a stack that we're taking to the senior center that have a particular QR code, and we're gonna have a
Or
stack.
paper copies.
Yeah, or paper copies.
Paper copy.
And I think, I guess my opinion is, for consistency of data, it should probably look a lot like the Mentimeter stuff, because that's the information that we've been collecting from people all along, and we don't want to deviate too much from the information we already have. Ideally, we want to get consistent data. So those similar questions, giving them this information so that they can say, oh, you're asking which option I prefer. Let me look. Here's the, right there on the front. Those are the options. Then I guess the request to the committee would be, if we're talking about just taking this and letting us move it around, I would request the committee say, yes, take it, move it around.
Yes.
And we're empowered, the staffs of the superintendent and the town manager are empowered to.
I think to do so differently, we just don't have the time or ability to do so.
So the other point too is when I was talking about doing a few things really well is because we are up against time constraints. If we're gonna get the mailer out, this flyer has to be perfected like yesterday, and that's gonna drive everything else. So my concepts were this flyer for social media and communication publicly, to be able to be a mailer, to also have a date for a public forum, as we talked about, in-person community forum, and then a senior center. And then we need to walk away tonight with information to put in the senior newsletter that I have to submit to Terry tomorrow to make it in to advertise the senior public forum. And the comment, this is from Diane Allen, which is relevant, is saying that for senior-related information, she is not recommending a QR code because seniors may not have the ability, not that I'm stereotyping if anybody's listening at home, I mean nothing by it, but this is coming from a fellow senior on their behalf, is please do not use a QR code for technical concerns, to keep it very succinct, less than a half page. So many people think it's just the Wildwood. We need to mention all the schools are included, which we have in this. Obviously, the cost and the tax impacts are key. She believes it's also important to mention that it's a two-part process. It's a town meeting vote and a debt exclusion. She believes that people need to know that it's a two-prong approach, because maybe people think that might be too much information at this point, maybe not, but we should discuss that, because people need to know that their job isn't just done at town meeting, they would have to do a secondary function. That's for discussion, and then it should state that the school building committee would be voting on a preferred option before a certain date, so they know the time parameter that they would need to be providing feedback. And then she indicated that it has to be succinct enough to draw them in to say, why do you even need to come and see the town manager and the superintendent that day? You're gonna be hearing about the preferred options, the cost implications, it could be a debt exclusion. I suggest you offer coffee, tea, and donuts, they'll come, and then that might be enough. Do you know what I'm saying? So that was her suggestion, on that. does that need to kind of roll into some feedback on this too? You know, I think a QR code has its place on this because it's going to a broader audience.
Yes.
And all the eloquent points that you stated would be great to be able to get those metrics, because I know, you know, data drives a lot of decisions, so.
Like you said, the survey with this few questions can easily be copied and brought to the senior center, and you can collect those right at the end, so that we don't have to deal with the code, which is what Diane's
Yeah, we can give
referring
them a
to.
hard copy
Yeah.
survey to fill out.
Right.
And
this would
even
serve-
leave them copies of the survey, and then they, you know, people who couldn't come.
And they would get it in their homes, and then this would serve as the marketing collateral for the actual forum itself. So I think if we get one master document, we can leverage that across, and not try and, you know, be all things to all people. Just
Right.
have one impactful flyer that says it all.
Do we also,
All right, go ahead.
do we also need to make a motion to appropriate funds from
Yes.
the, that bucket?
We're taking everything that I was going
Committed.
to talk about.
Just
And move
before,
that
if we
over.
can just hold on that for a moment, I just want to, because I do want to move us on, at least try to move us on here. So just to clarify I want to make sure we're clear here, the intent for refining this is going to sit with the town manager's office and my office. We'll work together to incorporate some of the changes that have been recommended here, and then we will look to get this out as quickly as possible, knowing that it won't come back before this full committee for approval, but the feedback that has been shared here, we will incorporate in, correct?
And if you could send it out to the full committee once you get
Certainly,
the final.
yeah, before it goes public.
Right.
Okay. David?
Just quickly on that, can we maybe set a very short deadline of if the committee has additional feedback that they want to share with your office and town manager's office, like, get it in by, you know, so, I mean, it's Tuesday, I don't know if that's Thursday or Wednesday or Friday. Obviously, earlier is better,
Yeah.
but just so that if people are interested in sharing some feedback, they have a sense of, I have this many days to gather my thoughts, and before the ship sails.
Yeah, I would say by Thursday. I would also say just to be very careful, because we are all members of a public body, that you're sending one email to one individual, and there's not a deliberation, they're not going back and forth.
We can work together on how we orchestrate that, but certainly, but one email back and forth, so directly.
And the survey questions, they need to be done the same, well, we need to have those. I think the
Yes.
same questions that we have been asking in what we put up here.
In the Mentimeter, I think we need to, that's my opinion.
I think the survey should be, which option do you choose? And keep it as simple as possible.
simple.
Keep it as simple as possible without, it doesn't have to be too granular, you know? And if they need more information, they can be directed to the website, right? And then they can do some in-depth investigation on the website. But the survey should be, which option do you choose? And give them the information, the financial information, the benefit to the town, the cost benefit of the town. If there's a way to work in, I heard last night too, you know, we're talking about the added value of renovation to the schools that we're going to keep online, if we kept them online, and how that would impact the ultimate cost of this project over the years, right? Is there a way to kind of float that up to the surface too?
It's on them.
Okay.
Okay. That on the back, but you're right, it's not.
I want to check back, Michael, in the outreach committee, is there anything further you need or are looking for tonight then?
If you give me a second to go back where we were.
Senior Center.
I think yes. I agree. To summarize some of the things we discussed, I do agree with Judy. We need to look at top 5. Just to go a little further through, we've talked senior center. Town website goes a little bit to the point of how we outreach.
Town email to the residents?
Well, whatever means we reach out through Facebook pages, Twitter, Instagram.
Why not the recreation email?
Say that one more time, I'm sorry.
Recreation department has a big email list of a lot of residents.
I think it's gone out. Some things have gone that, I think it's majority the same. It's very similar to who Dr. Brand's emails reach. So there's a lot of overlap with those too, but that's a great point.
The pickleball group.
What?
That's everybody. Look at all the seniors.
Yeah.
Can we get a car with a big speaker on the top like the Blues Brothers? And
I think the only other ones I'll highlight, and so we put some when on here, and we can revise some of these. I think general points, we know we need some information ready around the time back to school, and we did say before open houses, so we can have that. I like the idea of a survey that goes along with the exact flyers, if it's the same flyer that we have there. Down on poster boards, I think we were gonna ask Dawn, where do you do an update of a poster board? But in addition, if we could make what I say is an 11 by 17 size sheet, maybe simplified information, just options, costs. You know, we don't need the images for everybody, just some general information. We can place that in some locations such as retails that'll have it on various pinup boards that we can put that information.
Similar to the carnival posters that used to get put up
Similar,
every
something,
year,
yep,
everywhere, right?
something smaller we can put out, ask Market Basket if they'll put it like they've done the community flyer forums. Anybody will post it, it's a lot easier to do. An 11 by 17 is like 2 sheets of paper side by side.
Right.
And then the project FAQ, we've taken the information we've gotten so far. I gave a color-coded list out the other night. We haven't had a chance to go through it. Just red, green, orange, things we can answer, things that have been answered, and what ones we have to create questions to move forward. So I think we would work that through probably Tracy and others who are maintaining the website.
Great.
And would the Rotary help on this too, for some of the businesses, if you got to?
That could be a source to help.
They can disseminate it.
That'll be helpful.
Membership.
We've gotten, sorry, go ahead.
I'm just throwing this out here, I don't know whether we could do it, but is there some way that we could give students who need community service hours? Could they help out and stand in front of Market Basket and Eli's and,
Yeah,
and just hand out the flyers?
Sandwich boards.
Sandwich boards, well,
The end of the survey is 9.
It's a recommendation, it's been a recommendation that has been floated, and I think there's absolutely, I have found that, I tap into, there's always some students working through the high school that can do such projects for community service.
And what
So,
better advocate for a new school?
certainly, right,
Than a
our
student.
students?
right, who may have attended the Wildwood, even better, right? So, okay.
My only concern with that is that they would not be representatives of this group and have answers to any questions.
Right, they
posed
just,
by-
all they have to say is, just
Please take
take a flyer, that's all you.
take it.
Do the survey.
Any questions?
Yeah. Well,
Community
perhaps,
service.
Perhaps a portion of this needs to be, it says contact us, and then it has the website at the bottom, so maybe they just direct all of their concerns
Right,
and feedback
you know,
to that
just-
as a way out.
yep.
Kind of give them an escape hatch a little bit, and it's there. Some of the feedback is we've tried to shorten, these to like bit.lys, but we can only get them so short. So there was some concern about that. So we were trying to kind of make it concise, for sure.
Now, is that something that you could,
Yes, well, certainly I can
Foster
work
and-
with Mr. Jenner, and I can explore that, absolutely, as soon as school gets back in session.
So,
which is next week?
Maybe not day one, we'll get them in, but.
so Dr. Brand, for the purpose of moving along, Ronnie, I think we have one more slide. Maybe not.
No, we don't.
Okay.
It's just the mailer.
So, items that we wanted to talk about, and we can table a couple, so to move some of this forward, we did have a question about outreach, how do we reach a broader audience, written, I think we've answered that question. I think one other item, it kind of related to this, what can we make a motion to officially change what we're going to refer this project to consistently? I like Judy's recommendation of just Wilmington MSBA School Project, that was one item that I think might be in action. The second one, which has been discussed, is do we need to make a motion to appropriate funding for the mailer? And then the third item is kind of approval process. I think, to Judy's point, we do recognize that mailers and poster boards and items should be approved, whether it's through the committee or disseminated out through the town manager to this committee for direct feedback. And the second point is, outside of that, can PRUs send out communications, Facebook, other things with existing facts? So if we prepared a flyer, prepared mailers, we boil that some information down to put out on a post, which is what we've done so far. So there's kind of 3 things to talk about, and I think maybe 2 need a motion. So put that for.
So the first, could you just read one more
So
time?
the first
read
one would
those?
be if we make a motion to change the name that this committee refers to the project as. I like the idea of Wilmington MSBA School Project.
I'll
Or
make that
Wilmington
motion.
Elementary School Project. But getting Wildwood for our purposes outside of the name to avoid that confusion. Second one would be a motion to appropriate funding for the mailer. And the third is if there's discussion on how we get approval for documents.
I'll make the motion to change the name to what you've proposed.
Which was Wilmington MSBA School Project?
Yes.
So there's a motion to change the name.
Just for the purpose of our outreach to the community.
Right.
For avoiding confusion.
So we do have an emotion on the table, one more time, to change.
To change it to the Wilmington MSBA School Project.
And there was a second?
Thank you.
Okay.
Discussion.
Discussion?
Mr. Chair, if I could just clarify which agenda item this is going to be under, so we can protect ourselves before we vote.
Well, I would offer, great point, I would offer under discussion correspondence new items, number 8.
So, how do we feel about Wilmington Elementary School project?
I'm with you because, well, and I'm also concerned about, what if we engage in the next project that addresses perhaps, wow, I just drew a blank. On the west side, what's the elementary school over there?
Shawshene.
Thank you. Then how do we not cause confusion?
Yeah, just so you know, this was just put there as a,
Oh, yeah,
as a
yeah.
placeholder, like, I'm in love with anything that doesn't just reference the Wildwood, so.
I agree, I think it needs to say elementary, but I hear that. I don't know, I want to avoid kind of
Naming
referencing the north and west. I don't want to do that because I think it creates an artificial division of the town.
This will be the third name change, right? Because it started out as the Wildwood project, right? And then, I heard last night it's Selectmen, it's now called the Wilmington, I'm not sure what I heard last night. But it's changed from the,
Unofficial.
what's
This-
that?
Yeah,
This will be
this
the
is-
first official.
That's the first
Okay. Okay, and I just don't, because I heard a comment last night, like, we don't even know what this is called, it's evolved into something. So I just want to be sure that we're not confusing people.
Well, I mean, perhaps changing the name would be an effort to meet those folks' comments, right? Is that there has been kind of a lack of clarity about what we're getting at here, even though that was in the initial feasibility vote and was in the master plan about consolidation. So I'd be open to an amendment if someone wants to pitch it, to have it be Wilmington MSBA Elementary School Project.
Do you have anecdotal in terms of how it's been put, on presentations or any other media or communications that didn't say Wildwood related?
No, I think anything that's come through my office has been Wildwood School Building
Yeah, the
Project.
Wildwood School Building Committee.
I've tried to remain true to that if there's been.
So I will take responsibility for this, because I think in our agenda, it said Wilmington Elementary School Project.
Chair wasn't happy about that, but forgot about it.
But that wasn't you, I think that was me. I think
I guess my point is, I just want to avoid confusion. Like, everybody knows this project as some form or some iteration of a Wildwood project. And I don't care if we change the name, but, I don't want to be confusing.
Well, the MSBA, we've submitted SOIs, which I recall being written back as far as 18, but did they reference it as a specific name? Are we on file with MSBA
Wildwood.
under a particular
Yeah,
name?
this would change the official name of
So let's
the,
just say, I don't know, whatever we changed it to tonight, if we decided to, does that change the game at MSBA level? This, we're not gonna hold, listen.
I'll
This is
defer
just for
to
PR
our
purposes,
experts.
changing it.
So we have a motion on the table.
Can I amend it myself? I actually don't know the parliamentary procedure there.
I'll defer to those that are more expert.
You can withdraw it.
I'll withdraw it then, if we want to. And then resubmit as the Wilmington MSBA Elementary School Project.
Okay, and before we get, I'll just make a friendly reminder that there was discussion around this at some length ago, and there was a suggestion or thought to hold until a final decision was made on a project. I'm not suggesting that still be the course of action, but I'll just remind folks that there was a thought, should we wait? Should there be a delay until a final project has been decided upon and then brand it, so to speak, with that? But I will agree that there's been a lot of sentiment and feedback around some confusion here, so certainly the will of the committee, absolutely.
So to that point, just help leveraging off of what Mr. Malorani had said about changing this heading to begin with. Do we have to solve it tonight? And if we replace this with give feedback now and take the title and just let the background be the narrative? Do we have to struggle with such a name tonight?
Yeah.
Good point.
So
You know what I'm
that-
saying? This
that
was just a
covers it.
placeholder for a heading because it needed to be
Yep.
called
Yep.
something.
I think that works,
But if it's
because
a
you
call to
actually,
action,
you actually have Wildwood School Building Committee down here.
do you know what I mean? I don't want to get in the weeds. I'm just trying to be helpful.
Yeah, I
you
just,
know,
like
if we're
I said, I want to
struggling.
simplify this and make it as easy to digest as possible without confusing anybody.
To the point of simplicity, I think from a PR perspective, we want to know what we consistently use.
Right.
I think so far, we've been hesitant to change it from the Wildwood School Building Project because that's the official name.
And we
So
are
if we don't
getting
formally
a lot
change
of
it, if we discuss what we should use consistently, maybe that's just from a PR perspective, and it doesn't need to be related to the project or even a full motion.
Well, if we change, then, the email address is the wildwood.project page, right? Isn't,
That's easy, that's a tiny URL, that one can be.
that won't
edited.
matter? But it's the same with the email?
Not the email address.
We could create a
This
new
is the
Wildwood
website.
Projects, questions at WP. So all that would need to be changed if you're gonna take
I
away the
just
Wildwood.
hesitate, I think Dr. Brand makes a good point.
I do
that
too.
Once we settle on what we're actually doing here, maybe that's the time to brand this project.
You know, and I think to Diane Allen's comments for the seniors, I think we can do it narratively in the publication or narratively in the submission to the senior newsletter that calls out that it's more than just one. And maybe we maybe we have to use some methodology just to convey to the seniors that it's more than the Wildwood for that particular audience.
Sure.
I don't know. I'm trying to solve all of it at once, but it's not perfect.
And maybe when we settle on an option, that's the time this evolves into something else.
I'd suggest that this is less of an immediate concern as a title for something that has other information on it. I think that the main issue is that if people only hear the title of the board, of the committee or the project, then they think it's one thing. But if we're specifically giving them a piece of information that says we're looking at these three options and we'd like to know your opinion on them, there's less concern that they're going to be misled by what the specific title is.
And I was going to follow that up with, like what Judy said, we can in a narrative to the senior center, we don't have to call it the Wildwood School Building Project. We can say the project that's currently under evaluation to deal with certain elementary schools in town, and we can finagle it so we're not like changing the name unofficially, but still providing the information that they're looking for. And I think the clarity that it's talking about potentially touching all of these elementary schools without a formal name change. And then maybe if and when there's a vote that does something other than just the Wildwood School, then we can say, now it's official, now we're going to change it to
That makes sense.
Wildwood Elementary School.
2 points, so I've been crafting while we're talking to give to Judy, 250 words, the shorter we go, the better, as we trim this down. I think to close the loop on what Mr. Bendel said from a motion perspective, when we were asked to start putting together a plan, and it really became more certain on Friday, as Christine, Justin, and I have gone through this, we realized we can't put a plan together unless we raise a few motions. So this really came about in the last couple of days. So maybe it was not an anticipated business, but we really didn't even settle on some of this until I sent Ronnie some information yesterday. I don't know, I'm not fully versed in all of town meeting rules, but that's the process behind how we came here.
Yeah, I think that my concern was twofold. I appreciate that, because, one, I don't think anybody's coming after us if we change it tonight, but maybe, good luck to them. But two, it's more of like, I just want to make sure for myself, I just want to research and make sure that, beyond just tonight, this conversation, that I'm committed to what I think is the best bet. So that's where I'm at.
My office will be calling tomorrow.
I definitely don't want your office calling. I know where you work.
Okay, so that motion's been withdrawn. Appreciate the effort to clarify. You did raise a couple of other thoughts, Mr. Mr. Slagle,
And
sorry.
I wanted to speak to the second request, which was the appropriation
Appropriation,
request.
thank
So we, in full disclosure, we had a conversation with SMMA and Durham Whittier, the superintendent, and myself, and Judy, and Paul, and I think we need to find a source to pay for this mailer that is not under the auspices of this project. So I think the town manager's office needs to come up with a funding source outside of the project, because at this point, based on the current budget, we have a kind of only a small amount of unallocated, kind of unspoken for funds that need to last us through the town meeting and ballot question vote. I think we have about $25,000 that is unallocated.
I thought we had 150. Yeah. We had 100.
We have 150,000 but some of that is allocated towards the things that Durham Whittier have to do outside.
So when we come up with the preferred site, and we've been talking about it, right? Everybody wants traffic survey, boundary survey, geotechnical soils analysis, right? So the funding for that, once we pick on a preferred site, we'd be coming to you, now that we've picked this site, right, to hire those folks to come out and do all of that testing and engagement, we need to allocate some funds for that. So they've reserved that in the budget up to this point. Outside of that request, I think, Eric, you were talking about, somewhere in the neighborhood of $25,000 of unencumbered beyond that does have to last us until the fall of '25.
And so I'd rather at this point in time just find a way for the town to pay for it, and then see what happens over the next 8 months. And we have that $25,000 that the committee can allocate towards future projects.
To piggyback that, what we did talk about was doing some sort of a fundraiser in conjunction with PAWS, where PAWS can help champion for the expense of another mailer towards the town vote, et cetera. So we definitely talked about that. We discussed it with Jen Benelli last week. So that's another option so that we don't have to foot the bill on two of them.
The other thing, I'm sorry, I just want to kind of close the circle on this, and I think Lee and Julie could probably speak to this more eloquently than I can. But after there's a preferred option, we have some limitations on the kind of things that we can say leading up to a vote. We can provide factual information, but we can't this committee cannot print out vote yes signs. We can't be advocates. And so we will be able to spend money on factual information, but we won't be able to spend or do anything to advocate the vote. So I guess we don't need to get into that whole thing, but I think it's important to know that I think we should try to figure a way, and maybe I'll lean over on the school side to see if they have an extra coin in their pocket as well. But I think between the two of us, we should try to find a way to fund this outside of this budget so that we have that $25,000 for this committee if we need to do another factual flyer or something else between now and the end of the.
What's the estimated cost of the flyer?
So, if I may just
Yeah,
share that,
Judy,
is
thank
that, so just to step back, I'm gonna answer that question, but to come back, 151,000 that was there, the comments that Lee made about the activity that they would need to do is estimated to be about 120,000. And then they suggested having an extra 5 in the bucket for that, so that's where we're getting roughly 25,000, just so you know where those numbers came from. When we went to do the estimates before to the flyer question that you had, the estimates came between 9,000 and 11,000. The list that I was working off of came from Beth Lawrence, our town clerk, and I was going off of census data. It's about 10,300 and change in terms of households, and we were trying to do like a very urgent mailer within a 7-day turnaround time with first-class postage, and the ranges came between 9,000 and 11,000 and change, close to 12,000. At that point, we made a decision at the leadership level not to do it because it literally may not have gotten into the households before the time frame that we needed, and we made a business decision that we couldn't justify the fiscal expense. Now, with this additional time, we now have that opportunity. I will say that the superintendent's office has reached out to the town manager's office instantaneously to work together collaboratively, and we've been working very, very well together to get to this point, and I foresee that that would continue.
But we also do have some bulk mailing options that we can
Correct.
can
We believe we
explore,
can
and I think
reduce
we've
it
got some
down. We did
information
get some information that was shared from SMMA and through other means. We have those now. We just want to clarify the postage means for that and what the turnaround time is that we anticipate with going with a less expensive postage option. What that leads to, respectfully stated, I mean nothing by it, but mail times can vary depending on how things are sent. So if it takes 10 days for something to get in the mailbox, that's time lost. So we want to be sure that we're using a solution that's going to deliver the deliverable when we expect it to be there.
But I guess the answer to your question is, based on the quotes we have, the outside limit would be 9. And we were hoping to get it at less than that. So
I think we've taken care of the first and second, but.
No motions needed.
Wasn't there a third? No. You had a third?
Maybe we've discussed the third. The third is as we prepare documents, mailers, flyers, are we comfortable that town manager's office can disseminate to this committee and individual comments can be sent back for consideration? Or is that?
One comment I would just have with that, if I may, is that I appreciate that. I would say that it would be a collective effort. Glenn is the chair. So I would say that I think if the town, to my way of thinking, if the town manager and the school superintendent are endorsing, collectively, so the synergy between the two organizations, or we're all one organization,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying, that's how I would see it. And you're the chair, so I would defer to you as to what you would recommend and like to see.
But I would also just say, as the leadership group or team, as we're calling it, which is, again, as a reminder, inclusive of the town manager's office and the school department, and our consultants, our team here, I think that I would certainly be very comfortable with that kind of information flow going through that team with no objection of the committee at large, where we meet regularly, a lot, for long periods of time every week, but we are all collectively up to speed with the content. And so, Mr. Slagle, if you have no objection.
No, as long as the committee is comfortable with that level of, we have the basic structure and the information that we have, and what we're talking about is placement and distilling, if we're going to give some of the facts in a smaller thing. It's all going to be based on this master document, I think, that we've talked about, and then just getting into a format that might be easily digestible in different formats.
I'll say, being on the school committee, Glenn and his team, Mr. Superintendent, are very good at socializing materials. We get so many emails from you, so I'm sure you do a good job with that.
The other part too is that it's meant to be a help with all the well-intended volunteers. Like if you're running into printing problems, or you're running into delays, or you need administrative staffing, I want to keep the messaging positive, but the last mail insert, the town could have participated, or the school department could have participated in a bigger way to have made that a successful mailer. But we didn't know about it until after we were told it didn't go out. And so I don't want to focus on that. We have too much work to do. I want to keep it on the forward thinking. But we had no pivot to be able to do a secondary option, and we had no advanced days to recover. And I would just like to see, this is all with the spirit and intention to build, redundancies and fail-safe plans, that we have the opportunity to meet our milestone dates and meet our benchmarks and get us forward. So it's just lessons learned. It's all positive. We're moving forward. And we just want to try and make things better. That's all.
Okay, in an effort to move forward and try and move through the agenda, thank you for the discussion, and thank you for the collective input and ideas. Next, so scheduled discussion, next steps, I think is next, correct?
Actually.
Did I miss it? Oh.
Well, technically review of schematics. I will run through these very quickly, since we've all seen them.
How many times have we? In the last
How many times
24
this
hours?
week?
Has anything changed?
We do have one new slide, so I'm going to kind of skip over to it real quick. These are our 9 options under consideration with the updated cost. Here's the evaluation matrix. Pre-K 5 came in as the highest option.
We're going to hear your voice in our sleep.
Yeah.
I hope it's soothing. My nasally voice at the moment, but estimated project costs went up and down with PSR estimates. We calculated the local share based on potential eligible reimbursement with MSBA. This is the local share when we factor in the schools that would not be addressed by a preferred option. This was the impact for the town. The tax increase was calculated based on a monthly impact for each of the 5 options.
Can I ask just one question, too?
Sure.
I had a question from last night. What is the median home value based on? Is that from Vision?
Is it from, that's based on the number that the assessor gave me. I believe it's based on the assessed value.
And those numbers are what people are taxed on, right?
Yes.
So, okay.
We use Vision.
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to be sure we're using the right numbers, that's all.
Yeah, but yeah, the assessor's office came up. I did not try to do that myself.
Okay.
When is the reassessment? Next year? Next year?
And then we have one new slide. This was a metrics that was put together, and Lee's going to walk you through that.
So in an effort to provide you something new and exciting, we were looking at this project to try and come up with some different metrics to analyze between the different options. And what we were interested in was trying to take a longer-term view on which option potentially leveraged the most MSBA money overall for the town for a project. And so let me just walk you through it, and kind of a self-explanatory. The number of students or the enrollment that has been agreed to by MSBA in the town. The number of pre-K students is our assumption for the number of pre-K students. So you have a total enrollment population in each of them of 230, 610, and 855. Those are the project costs that you've heard us speak at length over the last several weeks. The estimated local share, and these are the estimated local share percent of cost, right? So 74.83% of the cost of a pre-KK we estimate would be a local share cost, 72.32% on the pre-K to 3, and 70.64% on the pre-K to 5, right? And so you start to see consolidation and economy of scale lend itself to, potentially more reimbursement for one option over another. Then we looked at, the equals on these things, the 30-year bond anticipation length. The minimum design life for these buildings that we're working on are 50 years, so consistent among all the options. And then a calculation of total project cost per square foot. This is project cost, not construction cost, so everything in. You can see as you get the scale up, the cost per square foot goes down. We also ran that with the local share, and the same results. As the project consolidation is more, the cost comes down more. And then we started to look at estimated local project costs per student, another way, a metric to look at it, right? And on a pre-K to K new, right, that's about $288,000 per student of the 230 students. And you can see how that changes as you go across. It's $154,000 per student for the pre-K to 5. Then we extrapolated that out. How many students will this serve over that bond life, right? And pre-K to K with 230 kids over 30 years, 6,900 kids go through that. 18,300 go through the system over 30 years on pre-K to 3. And 25,650 on a pre-K to 5. And so we were looking at just, how is your tax dollar touching different people? Is there just another way of looking at this? And then we looked at that estimated local share project cost per student over that 30-year bond period. And you can see with the consolidated pre-K to 5, right, that becomes $5,150 per student over that bond period. So we were just trying to put another tool for you to evaluate these options against, and it's just another lens of looking through it. And we were interested in trying to see, how much leverage for the MSBA reimbursement. What is this over long-term time for the number of students affected and getting the benefit for it? So we just offer this just as, another piece of information, another data point for you guys to look at when you're making your decision.
Thanks, Lee. Questions?
Did the square footage cost go up from last night? I thought we were talking 7 something last night for square footage cost.
That's the average probably of.
And that was
all
construction
the
costs?
And it's construction.
So these are project costs, like soup to nuts, all in. What we were talking about last night to try and benchmark where our estimates are, to try and give you some confidence. It's not just us coming up with stuff. How are we against our peer groups that are all going through the MSBA process right now?
Okay.
So that 739 was an average construction cost for those. So we were comparing our construction cost, to that. These are project costs.
Okay, so I just got tripped up on that. So if we put out a number like this, other people might say the same thing. Did the costs go up? Just, we need to clarify that, that's all.
It's the difference between a project cost versus construction.
Other questions for Lee?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have a question necessarily for him, but for you, actually, if I can. So, of all the things that came out of last night's 4-hour meeting, which, by the way, I don't know if I've said thank you for everyone who came, but I got a call this morning, and of all the things discussed was a question around one of the comments that you made, and I didn't know if you wanted to elaborate or clarify, and it was talked about when you used the phrase staffing adjustments. That could be a possibility. Now, I know we can't predict the future, and I don't intend to, quote you here, but I just didn't know if you wanted to clarify or elaborate that a consolidation could result in, I think the words you used were staffing adjustments. This person interpreted it as reduction, but that's their interpretation. You did not use that word because that would have, so I don't know if you wanted to elaborate or clarify.
It's, knowing where we're going, whether it's, I'll make an assumption here that it's not a pre-KK. And that's a big assumption. But if there's any other building configuration that emerges from this group, this committee as a consolidated option of some sort, we are required through this process to take a hard and fast look at staffing estimations. It's part of there's a lot of different elements to this project, and staffing is one of them. So we are already in the process of doing our best to take what those enrollment numbers that are locked in will dictate in terms of staffing. And we are taking a look at how many buildings we're operating right now, what our total staffing complement is, and making adjustments accordingly of bringing people under one roof. The reality is that there's a lot of projections there, just as would be the case of that a staffing in the Wildwood right now at X might not be X next year. Because things can change one way or another. So it's guesstimation in terms of what that looks like, but what we do have a clear picture on is we know that adjustments, and it's an easy one to refer to, and that's our school administration. We have a very different school administration model right now across 3 schools than I would fully anticipate we would under one roof if it was pre-K to 5 or if it was pre-K to 3. So that's what I was trying to get at without being too concrete or specific, because that's really hard right now to do. But those numbers, those staffing numbers that will become part of the information we have to provide MSBA becomes part of all of the repository of information, and certainly our public documents, of which we'd be more than happy to share with the committee as we move forward. But as I said last night, these are projections, just like it would be impossible for me to predict exactly what our staffing complement could be at the middle school 2, 3, 4, yet 5 years out from now. So.
Thank you, yeah. And I appreciate you repeating that, because of all the things, like I said, that was the first concern that I heard this morning, so thank you.
Yeah, no, and I can fully appreciate and understand that's going to be, again, if it's any consolidation solution that comes from this, I fully anticipate, and rightfully so, residents will want to know that. And that holds true, I think, for our department. I think that also holds true for some of the town departments in terms of custodial or other facets of our operations. What's that really going to look like? And I do fully, we've had some very sort of high-level conversations around this going forward. Part of that press of, we'll call it October 1st or whenever it is, to the actual vote. I fully anticipate the need to try and pull together a narrative that can allow a resident to understand what consolidation could, again, if that's the path we're going, whether it's a pre-K to 3 or pre-K to 5, what that looks like and how that compares or contrasts to sort of the status quo. I would ask that question if I was a resident, because I'd be curious. Everything from transportation to staffing to custodial services and everything in between. It's those are rightful questions, and I think we need to be prepared, and I certainly will be, to work with the town offices on that.
Thank you.
You all set, or do you have more?
Next steps.
Okay, next steps.
Dr. Brandon, one item, so talking costs and seeing nowhere else to talk about the agenda, I guess I want to make 2 points. We've gotten a lot of comments, some people spoke last night, I've heard from others, the cost of the gym, for the pre-K-5 option, do we reduce the gym size? I think this ties into taking a look at the estimates, and I know we're in a schematic level or early design phase, but where are there areas that we can optimize some of these building sizes? Can we look at some flex spaces? Somebody mentioned last night OTPT spaces. I know we've dedicated spaces for that. How much of the corridor breakout spaces are used? Is there overlap where some of those spaces are empty? Could they be used by others? Are there things that we can look at that gets the building square footage slightly reduced? And maybe that's going to happen in the next phase, but I think that's some things that we should think about, because we're talking about cost. Has this committee looked at enough ways to right-size the buildings? And so that's a pre-K-5 comment. On the pre-K to 3, I've never loved the overhang. I don't know, I assume there's a cost premium associated with that. I understand that plays into circulation. But if pre-K to 3 is going to be a serious option, and we have additional weeks to make this decision, if that's a concern for others and that's a hang-up for voting for that option, that could be somewhere else to investigate. What's an alternative? I know Dennis isn't here, it's great, he's on vacation, but I'm sure he's had some concerns for that as well. Related, we may not get more information on this project, but things that we can do is we have the cost estimates on the repairs. We've made some assumptions on what, if we do a pre-K to 3, what costs have to go into, say, the north. I'm going to email Dennis, I'd like to find a time to sit with him or get his input on where we really see these projects happening over, is it 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, to get instead of just talking 25 to 40 million, say it's X number of projects over X number of years. And maybe that can't get to that granular, but it'd be nice if some of us can sit with Dennis and get some of that input from the buildings department.
So the questions. I'm not sure, Lee, do you want to speak to the term you've used is the value engineering, I think, right, going forward, and when that would come into play?
I think it's optimizing square footage to make sure that we're being very efficient in what we do, and that's an ongoing process, and we started that back from at the PDP level. We came out with, here's our program square footages, and that was our first piece of business during this PSR phase, is to challenge all those assumptions that we made. And we did make some reductions in square footage. At the same time, we have lots of boxes to check with needs driving the educational program, MSBA space standards, et cetera. So we've taken a pass through that. We've made some adjustments, and they've come down a square foot, which affected the cost. It's an ongoing process through every phase of design. So we are always constantly looking, is there a way to double use spaces? Is there a way to approach this more efficiently? To your point on the pre-K to 3 option, with the second floor overhang, right? These are test fits for us in feasibility to be able to say, yes, we think we can do that program on this site. This is one way of doing it. There's lots of different ways to do it. And as we get into more detail in the design, we'll start to flesh some of those out and review them with you. And here are some potential savings opportunities. We could approach things differently this way. That'll be an ongoing process. So we have been doing it, and we will continue to be doing it. At the same time, we have lots of other requirements that we hit. So it's a balancing act, and we'll be able to come back and forth with the committee and be able to say, we think we can squeeze something down here. These are potential repercussions, some benefits potentially, and as we move forward. So it will change as we go through the process. But it is a cumulative effect. When we submit to MSBA, right, what they're asking us for and what they asked us for at the last phase, tell us your needs. What is the way you guys want to deliver your program, for the foreseeable future? And we narrated that, and we said, this is the vision moving forward. And these are all the needs that we have, and we translated those needs into square footage. So MSB has received that, and so when we go back and if we change, we just have to have rationale to be able to say, we found a better way to do something, and we're still meeting those needs that we still did. So it's that process of back and forth, and we'll continue with that through the design process.
Thank you.
Okay.
Next step.
Ready?
Next steps. So at the end of this month, we would have submitted the PSR submission to MSBA on August 29th. That will now be delayed till October 24th. Obviously, we've talked a lot about the efforts for community outreach. The two that I've noted on here are a community forum for September 18th, the senior center for September 19th, and then we do have SBC meetings for October 7th, and then early in October. Yes.
To that point, can we just have a discussion about in-person? I would just like to go on the record stating that I believe that every one of these meetings should have an in-person component to them. I like the idea of offering a virtual option, but I think in the midst of the level of interest and importance of what we're doing, I would very much like to advocate for an in-person for these items. I don't know if anyone else has any opinions that may want to support that or not support that, but I agree with that.
Me too.
Yeah, I think it's important.
So for the public forum, just to clarify though, because there's a lot of also planning that has to go into the technical side of this, and I too support the in-person. I don't know whether or not WCTV is available to record that. It's always a question that we can cast their way. But what I am hearing with that is that we won't go to the effort of providing a virtual option. Because to do so in the auditorium would be, I think, a lot technologically to do so. I could stand corrected if talking to Ken, but there is a lot more that might meet the eye here to go in to make this as seamless as possible. So if there's no objection to that, then we would hold it virtually, knowing that, and we did not check with WCTV for the forum specifically and their availability, so I can't speak to their availability, but we may or may not have that coverage. Just, I want to put that out there.
I think with them, it's more a matter of notice. So the sooner if we could say, if we're going with the 19th and we can tell WCTV tomorrow that we're planning to have the community forum on the 19th and we need coverage, then it's much easier for them to do it.
And also for the vote, right? I mean,
I'm sorry, the 18th.
Well, anywhere from October 1 to
Right,
October
sure,
9th,
yeah.
WCTV is not available, that would be a big problem, right? So that's certainly one thing to.
Again, and with them, I don't think they have windows. I think they just need notice. So the sooner we can set a date for the October date, and I will tell them tomorrow the 19th, or sorry, the 18th community forum, which is going to be here at the auditorium.
So that would be at the auditorium, the senior center would be at the senior center. And I think you need to incorporate that in the flyer.
Yes.
In terms of the in-person
location.
component, so people know.
Yeah.
And then for the SBC meetings, they would be here, and then for the October one, just to reiterate that, would there be some sort of a schedule, doodle poll? How did we leave that?
Yes.
Can you remind?
Yes.
Okay, so that we know we can get mass, critical mass in the room.
We just, and I just on that point, we'll through my office, I'm happy to send out that doodle poll. We just really need your responses. If we want to move quickly on this.
By Friday or else. Speaking
Well,
on our for
sometimes it's been a struggle, so we definitely need responses there. So.
Do you have times for those 18th and 19th dates yet?
So the community forum, did you discuss a time frame when you discussed dates?
Those dates were just selected prior to this meeting starting,
Yeah.
so
did
we haven't.
We did not nail down a time, but
Yeah.
whether it be 6:30 or 7 o'clock, the senior center, I think, is.
The senior center is 2.
Two.
Yeah.
So may I offer a suggestion, just with the community forum, and I'm respectful of family and work commitments, but perhaps we offer a time start that gives the front end to have some daylight, because if some seniors wanted to come, they don't like to drive at night. So maybe we pick, at least a portion, and, I don't want to get too delineating, but, at least give them an opportunity to come and make a comment, perhaps leave, and they can drive in a safer environment, because that has been expressed to select board members and other committees about their ability to come out and drive.
I'm happy to do whatever time.
Does anybody have any opinions around here as to what you think would be an optimal time?
There seems to be a standing arrangement that meetings take place later in the evening, certainly moving forward slightly, but being respectful of people commuting home, especially on a weekday.
Yeah, I think
from
you
the
can't
city.
go any earlier than 6:30.
6:30 would be fine. I think it's,
Yeah.
even if it's just, you know, a little bit earlier, so it, so, you know, 7 seems late to certain people. It's just past their window of opportunity. If they get home, they put their keys down, they're not coming back out, you know what I mean? So,
6:30 is cool.
just wanted to strike a balance. I don't want to overthink it, but just,
Well, why don't we just do 6:30, that way?
Sure.
plus if it runs long, like these meetings, then.
We don't have to roll on cots.
So just so you know, on September 19th, sunset is 6:45.
Thank you.
Well, a beautiful view.
Well, I'm just thinking seniors and driving.
All right, we are good with schedule?
Yes.
And, next steps, thank you. So we are on Public Relations Working Group, item number 7.
I don't have anything new. Did we forget something?
No, very good. Just check.
I could address the
Item number 8.
feedback.
Yes. Item number 8, discussion and correspondence then.
Yep. So we have correspondence feedback that comes in via email to the web address that we all know about. We've all received it, but we don't share it beyond this group. The PR team does use it to incorporate into the FAQs, so therefore we look and see what people are saying, and we turn it around, turn it into a question, and push it into the FAQ. Does anybody need or want to have those read into the record? Do we want to summarize them and post them on the website? Do we want to post them unanimously on the website, not in summary? Is there any opinion? Because so far, we've kept it to us.
And if I may, I'll just clarify. First off, there's been really the uptick since, over the last few weeks for the project. It's been very, very idle, almost nothing to the last month. I do receive those, as does Julie, as our OPM. I respond when somebody sends in an email to that project question to confirm receipt and say that it will be passed on, the correspondence will be passed on to the committee at large. And that's why you've been receiving those lately, and may seem like it's the first time, but it's really the first time that we're getting these correspondence. So just to clarify. But they're
So
not
the-
posted on the website, they're just right now going to the committee at large here.
And they're just addressed to the committee, correct? I mean, they're to the Wildwood Committee, right?
Yes.
To the project.
Sometimes it'll be myself or others, but
Yeah, I've
generally-
gotten them as a finance committee member too. I don't think there's a need, because I think they're communicating directly to the committee to post them anywhere.
Yeah, I agree with Marion, and I do have some concerns about posting emails, even anonymously, because then if you get one that you don't want to post because it says something derogatory, then you're making a choice.
Right.
And then all of a sudden it's First Amendment stuff, better to just not post them at all and send them to the committee, and then we don't have to worry about it running afoul of any issues.
I think to that point, Dr. Brand and to Christine's, we're still having to interpret. We see 6 or 7 questions that all kind of look the same. We're going to boil that down to what we think is the most representative FAQ response and then put that out. So for example, there's been many around funding, votes, taxes that all kind of tie into one. So I think when we prepare some, we'll share them with leadership. But as long as that's okay, as everyone understands, that's how we're going to have to go through this. Because if we answer every single one, there's going to be 20 or 30 redundant questions for each kind.
Yeah.
I think just to share, in the past, we've gotten some extensive emails that have questions, they have opinions, they have, in some instances, probably language I don't think would be appropriate for any website, because it's not fact-based, it's their interpretation, and everyone has the right to their opinions, but I think that website and these sites should be based on facts and real concrete data. In the spirit of transparency, going out to the committee is one thing. I don't think it's trying to conceal or censor anybody, but I think it's taking fact and opinion and separating that. And that's what people are doing on the social media sites, and they can do it on their own time and put it on their own page. I don't think we have a responsibility to regurgitate that same information, and I think it would really take away from the merits of the project. I will tell you, as a working example, we received one from a constituent we had that as a focal point with our leadership meeting. Glenn and Eric basically went through it and said, your office will take this piece, our office will take this piece, we'll combine it together. And then Eric had any appropriate conversation with the select board chair and select board members as he deemed appropriate to make sure that we were holding accountability to the boards and committees that we report to. So it just helped, the part of this too is just to kind of keep everyone on the same page and make sure that we don't get ahead of our boards and committees too, and that we have buy-in, from the people that we're working with. We do want to serve the public, and we do want to answer people, and we want people to feel that they can have a voice. That's why there's a public comment section here. That's why there's public meetings, and there's other community outreach. So I think, the major points have been said, but I would be adamantly opposed to putting transcripts of emails on websites to perpetuate potential negative connotations that we really should avoid. In my opinion, this is a very difficult assignment to begin with. We don't need to add to the load.
I do have one question about getting out the word. Is there a way we can use the town's 911, reverse 911 when we get closer to the meeting?
So you're not the first person who's asked, and that's something I have to check to make sure that we're not violating our terms of service, and that it's something that we can do without triggering any kind of. That's something other people have asked me, and I think it's not a bad idea. I don't want it to turn into something where people stop paying attention to it because it's not an emergency. But as a one-time thing, maybe it's a good idea. So I just have to check with the public safety about that.
One additional point is, I think there was concern about how many people have it now with the obsolescence of landlines and how many subscribers we have. I mean, it's one point of outreach, but I don't think it's as robust as it once was.
Is it a different kind of system? Because I know when they were paving Burlington Ave, I got a reverse 911 from DPW, but within 5 minutes, I actually got an email. Is it all tied in as one system? Can you separate the email out from
I think
the phone
depends
number?
on how you opt in.
Yeah.
I think you can.
I think I opted in both ways.
So I think that's why you got both of the responses. So if somebody opted in for just emails, then now they would get his emails.
But can you separate that out in the system?
That's a good question. I don't know. That's a good question.
Committee questions, item number 9 tonight. Are there any questions that have not been fielded tonight? Okay. Number 10 is public comment. Again, we'll open it up to anyone who's here in person who may wish to offer any public comments, or those that are online that are still tuned in. If no one here in person.
Oh, wait.
There's someone online.
Yep,
There is
Mark
someone online.
Haldy.
Hello, Michael Rapaldi, 5 Bristol Road, also member of the school committee. Just wanted to make a comment to this group. First off, I just want to thank you for all of the work you've been doing over the past years. I've been tuning in from the outside at the school committee, and I've been really appreciative of all the hard work everyone's been putting into this. It's been really phenomenal. Just want to talk a little bit about kind of where we're at with this project as a whole. I really understand the rationale behind the committee to delay the vote, and I wish I could be there tonight, but unfortunately I can't help. The effort to gather more of the feedback I think is really commendable and may be time well spent. I would like to advocate that the community is going to be looking, though, for all of you to help guide us to the best option for our students and families. And the rationale behind that is that you've been so in tune with this project for the past couple of years. You're the experts. You know exactly what we need to do as a community. You know all the ins and outs and everything like that. So you can help really guide us on the direction we need to go. So the reason why I say this is really looking at you to help guide us as a community is I sincerely believe we have a generational opportunity here to enact lasting positive change for students and their families with this MSBA grant. We can consolidate the schools to lessen the burden on the families, dramatically improve our educational spaces to help our children. What I'm worried about is that the fear of change or inertia could maybe squander us as a community from taking this opportunity. Because it's going to be a hard challenge for our community. Change is hard, and I totally get that. It's really up to us to be the leaders that the town's looking for and help guide everyone to be better, and help deliver us a stronger chapter in our town's education system. So how do I think we should go about doing this? I would suggest that we may follow and support the building committee's process. You know, you've all done such good work to kind of find what is the best ranking option here. Really gather and kind of coalesce around that K through 5, while also being good financial stewards. I was really pleased to hear some talk about, hey, that was our initial rollout. Can we reduce the cost of this a little bit, right? I think that's great. Really kind of focus how we can lessen that financial impact, and then really understand and how we can deliver for our community on how we can get the best option for our families and our students. Our citizens are smart. They know nothing's for free. They know this is going to cost money, right? What they're really looking for is for us to make sure we can deliver a quality product in a cost-effective manner so we don't have to revisit these issues again 10, 20, 30 years later. If we follow this path, I feel we can deliver a long-lasting legacy to the students and families in Wilmington for generations to come. So thank you for your time. Thank you for hearing me out. And thank you again for all the work that you've been doing the past couple of years. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. McCaldy. Anybody else online?
No.
Okay. Our next meeting is scheduled for September 17th. Here in this room, I will make an assumption that we'll continue to provide an opportunity for people to join remotely if they're in need of doing that, but appreciate all of your time. I know it's been a long night tonight. I know it's been a long night, 2 nights in a row for many of you around the table. I appreciate the dialogue and the direction that we're heading, so thank you for your engagement. There's a lot of hardworking committees in this community, and you are certainly one of them right now, so thank you for all of your time. And with all of that, looking for an adjournment tonight. Roll call, please.
I have one comment, sorry, I forgot to mention this. In terms of the community outreach, one thing I neglected to say is that the other thing I didn't see on that list was press releases. And we should be sending a press release directly to Patch to, is the Advocate still a thing? Does anybody know?
I don't think so.
Okay. Town Crier at the very least, and even the Lowell Sun, because I know a lot of people get the Lowell Sun, but can we also send out press releases? And that's another way that we can get the word out on this stuff. That's all.
The other part to that is those items are no cost. Once we start getting into.
I'm just trying to think globally and.
These are gonna be paid ads.
Yeah.
You know, so we have to leverage what's free. So that is a good point.
Great.
So Justin, I think we had only put Town Crier. We'll discuss the best way to get it consistent to all.
Patch, Apple,
Yep.
and, yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
I'll move to adjourn.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
That's all right. Well, one more thing. A second that.
I was just, someone would have called that. All right. Roll call.
Dr. Rand?
Yes.
Greg Bendel? Yes. Kate Bissell?
Yes.
Kevin Kyra? Michael Camosio?
Yes.
Justin Couchet?
Yes.
Marianne Galezzo?
Yes.
Nicholas Golden?
Yes.
Christine Holleran?
Yes.
Paul Millerani?
Yes.
Craig Minor?
Yes.
Christine Murray?
Yes.
Judy O'Connell?
Yes.
Christine Pendergrass?
Yes.
David Ragsdale? Paul Ruggiero?
Yes.
Stacy Scott?
Yes.
And Eric Schlegel?
Yes.
Good evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No.